Because, like, the book is kind of, well, first off, it's kind of boring.
Oh.
Quack.
Hello, and welcome to another Little Duck Book Club episode with Duck number 1,
Ren, and deck number 2.
Anna. And I mean, we enjoyed it, you enjoyed it, so we're doing a second episode of Keep Burn Rewrite. It's a fun format, and we really wanted to do another one. So here we are, number 2.
We're bringing back a fan favorite, but more importantly, a creator favorite. Like,
I mean, we get to talk about books we've already read. To be honest, though, I will have to read faster because going through Ren's roster of book is it's like insane, and then Ren has to go through my like 50 books I've read so far in my whole life. It's kind of big.
yeah, the really fucked up part, though, is that you keep picking books that I read years ago, and I'll be like, oh no, I don't remember enough. I need to, like, leaf through this again and reread some parts of it to remember what exactly happened.
We're pulling punches left and right.
Yeah, it's like, it's fucking massacre in here. It's like suffering for everyone. But we're into it, so it's fine.
Yeah. We're doing this of our own volition, basically. So yeah, do you want to jump right in? Like start with the keeps, I guess?
I mean, I guess we could first just introduce what 3 books were even available for each of us.
Yeah,
just
we can also do that.
Yeah, these are the choices we were given.
The choices we were given.
Yeah.
I mean, we just briefly talked about it, that we don't even remember which books we gave the other person.
Yeah, I mean, just you can say which books I gave you, and then I can say which books I have.
So you gave me 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Those were the 3 books you gave me.
I did do that to
you. Did do
That's
that.
True. Yeah, the books you gave to me were The Near Witch from V.E. Schwab, The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson, and Shatter Me from Tahara Mafi.
Okay, so I was so interested in Shatter Me. It's like it's my way of getting information out of you about this book
I love it. You could have just asked me instead of doing this to me, you know?
But now we have it on tape.
That's true. And now for posterity, you can listen to it again and again. You can be like, wait, what did they say about Shatter Me? I need to refresh my memory.
When I'm standing in front of the bookshelf at a store, I'm like, should I? And I just whip out this episode and go, no.
You turn on the episode and you're like, I shouldn't.
I shouldn't. I love that I'm saying this before even hearing your thoughts about the book.
I mean, you saw my rating of it,
did.
so like, I think that says a lot. I could have just said like, no, don't bother, read something else.
But yeah, we've got quite a selection. I think apart from Ninth House, it's all romantasy, right? Or are yours not?
I mean, I feel like The Near Witch is not romantasy in that sense. It's more like, it's like it straddles the line between fantasy and like historical. It's very vague about the setting. And like it has a romance, but it's also kind of like, you know, it's about like a witch and kids disappearing and stuff, so it's more like a little horror adjacent. It's not quite romantasy. Kiss of Deception is absolutely romantasy, but Shatter Me is the romantasy equivalent for sci-fi. I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic world, so it's like, you know, dystopian, but very romance heavy.
I'm trying to rack my head around a nice, catchy combination between romance and sci-fi, but I'm not coming up with anything. So yeah, do we want to start? I think we can do like, I think last time we did the summaries of each book when we were going through them.
Yeah, when we were talking about it. Yeah. I think I went first last time, so I think you get to
I get to start this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
equality.
I was struggling when I looked at these books, and in the end, I went through not all possible combinations, but I think I went through a lot of combinations, and what I then decided on was to keep 3 Dark Crowns. What is the book about? It's I'd say a typical YA setting, I guess. You have a kingdom which has a quite curious way of deciding who the next queen will be. But that's YA fantasy for you. Where you have the previous queen birthing triplet girls, and at birth they get separated. So each goes to one of the big like magic factions, you could say, on the island, depending on which power the girl has. We have people who can control elements. We have naturalists who have very deep connections to animals and nature, and we have the poisoners, who are basically people who are immune to poison. So if you eat dinner with a poisoner, you're basically dead.
But also, like, objectively less cool than controlling elements or like talking to animals and having a familiar, and so it's like, wow,
and I can
that's really not a fair distribution. But yeah, do you want to read the summary, or do you want to just talk about it? Because last time I know we read the summaries, but like sometimes they suck, so I don't
Oh no, it's fine, I can read the summary. In every generation on the island of Fenburn, a set of triplets is born. 3 queens, all equal heirs to the crown, all possessed of a coveted magic. Already talked about this. Mirabella, a fierce elemental, can spark hungry flames with the click of a finger. Catherine, a poisoner, is known to be resistant to the deadliest of snake bites. Arsinoe, a naturalist, is rumored to have the ability to bloom the reddest of roses. But becoming the queen crowned is not just a matter of royal birth. These 3 sisters must fight to the death for the throne, and on the night they turn 16, the battle begins. Only one queen can inherit the crown. Whose side are you on? So that's, basically it. These girls get trained, and at the end of the book, there's a show of power, which kind of starts off the big conflict for the rest of the series, because I think it's 4 books or even 5.
I don't know. I know I read the first and the second one, and I was like, after the second one, I was like, oh, this is getting worse. I'm not putting up with it.
Yeah, you gifted them to me, and I liked the first one, which is why I went into the second one with like equal interest, but then it lost me.
It's
so I liked 3 Dark Crowns for the unashamed, unhinged YA-iness of the book.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's fun to read about that. The reason why I rated it so low was because there was so much romance. You have 3 main female characters. Each of these female main characters has a love interest. You have side characters who also have love interests. And they're 16, obviously, it's not going to be the most conversational book. It's quite, lots of emotions, lots of, I love you, you love me, blah, blah. And that kind of grated on my nerves. I love the twist in the end, which I'm not going to say here, because maybe some people want to read the book as well. I liked it. It was very obvious, but I still liked it. I was like, please go with it.
Yeah.
And the author went there. But yeah, of all of my selection, I saw the least potential for a rewrite, and it wasn't the worst of the 3.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's it in short for me for 3
Yeah,
Dark
I
Crowns.
mean, if you're keeping it, it's like, it's fine. So it'll stick around. Yeah.
As an information, Ren gave
not
me
that much
only
to say.
books that I rated low this time. So it's not a,
Yeah.
oh my god,
I
which
was
of
like,
my favorites?
I'm not making you kill your favorite book. But you have, most of the books you have are like rated high. Like, because like most things are stuff you liked. So I was like, there's not that much.
Because I like books for all different kinds of reasons. So it's like, I either like the vibe, even though it's trashy, or it's genuinely good. So the high rating comes from that. So yeah, that's a bit mean when it comes to selecting books for this.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You'll just have to, deal with the highly rated ones in the future. Because, like, again, there's not that many lowly rated ones, so...
So,
yeah.
What is your keep out of the 3?
My keep is actually also a romantasy, which is The Kiss of Deception, for, I feel like, almost similar reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do the summary first. Yeah. The kingdom of Morrigan is steeped in tradition and the stories of a bygone world. But some traditions Leah can't abide, like having to marry someone she's never met to secure a political alliance. Only in this kingdom, by the way. This happens nowhere else. Fed up and ready for a new life, Leah escapes to a distant village on the morning of her wedding. She settles in among the common folk, intrigued when 2 mysterious and handsome strangers arrive, and unaware that one is the jilted prince and the other an assassin sent to kill her. Deceptions swirl, and Leah finds herself on the brink of unlocking perilous secrets that may unravel her world, even as she feels herself falling in love.
What are parallel secrets?
I mean, there's some, like, political stuff, I think, and there's also some, like, fantasy history stuff and, like, magic stuff. But, like, the main draw of the story is that the fun bit about it is that you have Leah's perspective, obviously, but you also have the perspective of the other 2 guys.
That's cool.
But the perspective are not titled with their names, they're titled with their roles. So one is the prince and one is the assassin. And the text keeps it unclear which is which is the funny part of it, and which is why I got it in the first place, because I thought it was, like, a funny premise.
That's such yeah.
Again, like, I didn't rate it super high, because I wouldn't say it's, like, great literature, but it is fun. Like, if the premise sounds fun to you, and if you like romantasy, and it's, like, you think the premise just, like, sounds hilarious. It's very fun. It really commits to what it's trying to be. And, like, I applaud it for that. Like, obviously, it's incredibly romance-heavy. It's insanely stupid that she can run away and then live in a village and has, like, valuable life skills, someone who's raised as a princess, whatever.
Yeah.
It's, like, that's just the conceit of the genre, And it's just campy, silly fun. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't change that much about it. The sequels really fall off. Like, the first one is mainly carried by the premise of having, like, the different points of view and being like, okay, trying to pinpoint who is who and what, like, scenes mean from her perspective when you're trying to figure out if she's interacting with the person who's trying to kill her right now or the other one,
Yeah.
But obviously that's revealed at the end of the book, so the other books are a lot more boring because they don't have the fun mystery element anymore. But yeah, no, it's silly fun. I had fun while reading it. It's exactly what the description tells you it is. So it's like, yeah, it's, like, is it great? No, but also I don't think there's much to change about it without fundamentally changing what kind of book it is.
Yeah.
Which,
it does sound like an extremely fun premise.
Yeah, no, it is really fun. It's like, I was entertained the entire time, which I think is all that matters, really.
It feels like a book
but
I could like,
I rate
actually.
books on my Goodreads from, like, a quality standpoint.
Yeah.
So, like, I had fun, but it was not good. Let's be very clear. If the premise doesn't make you go, oh yeah, I really want to read this sounds amazing, don't bother. It's not, like, it has nothing else to offer except, like, the tropey funness of, like, a YA with, like, this mystery twist.
Oh, but like, genuinely, that sounds like something I could enjoy.
I mean, I'd be happy to lend them to you, like, next time we meet.
Yeah.
In person.
Why not? It sounds like a fun premise. Because I'm the mood, the vibe reader of us two, so.
You have a greater appreciation for silly books, just like, which, again, I'm always like, man, I'm kind of jealous of the fact that I can't have as much fun, because I'm often just like, wow, this is too bad. I'm not having a good time, and you'll be like, oh, it was bad, but I had a good time, and I'm like, damn, I wish I had fun.
I'm currently reading our next book discussion book, which is also on the trashier side. And I'm living my best life, honestly. I'm enjoying myself currently so much because I'm already praying for you though.
I'm like, when you told me we were like, oh yeah, I'm surfing the trash world, I was like, oh no, am I gonna be miserable again?
You will. But yeah, that's I'm your trash panda of literature connoisseurs. Okay, those were our very fast keeps. Shall we continue with the next one?
Yeah. Next one would be the burn.
My burn.
So I'm curious which one.
Listen, I was in the trenches.
In the pile.
I was in the trenches because basically I switched my decision midway through, and I hope I do not regret it. But I thought I can't do this.
Yeah, obviously this is like a binding, important decision to make.
So the burn I'm now going to present to you, I actually also had a small rewrite prepared for it.
Yeah.
So my burn is Fourth Wing from Rebecca Yarros.
Deserved.
Oh god, that's one lengthy description. Okay. Welcome to the brutal and elite world of Basgiath War College. 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail was supposed to enter the scribe quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. Now, the commanding general, her toughest talent's mother, has ordered Violet to join the hundreds of candidates striving to become the elite of Navarre, dragon riders. But when you're smaller than everyone else and your body is brittle, death is only a heartbeat away, because dragons don't bond to fragile humans. They incinerate them. With fewer dragons willing to bond than cadets, most would kill Violet to better their own chances of success. The rest would kill her just for being her mother's daughter, like Xaden Ryerson, the most powerful and ruthless wing leader in the Riders Quadrant. She'll need every edge her wits can give her just to see the next sunrise. Yet, every day, the war outside grows more deadly, the kingdom's protective wards are failing, and even worse, Violet begins to suspect leadership as hiding a terrible secret. Everyone at Basgiath has an agenda, so sleep with one eye open, because once you enter, there are only two ways out. Graduate or die. Honestly, that's what my nervous system thinks about my PhD. It's like...
Yeah, I feel like that's everyone's school experience.
It's like, okay, Violet. The reason for my burn is...
That's bad, yeah.
I despise Violet Sorrengail as a main character. She had me in the first third. Like, I started reading the book, I despised her. I got into the book again because I was like, come on, maybe you're a bit harsh. And I actually thought it was kind of okay-ish until she lost me again, and then she kept on losing me. And honestly, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but I would want to read a book about Xaden. Make Xaden the main character, because he, in my opinion, is one of the only sane people in this college of dragon riders. Because legit, in my opinion, he did nothing bad. He's a good man. Because it's like Violet as a character has a very weird, unreliable narrator, just doesn't have a lot of information POV going on. At the same time, she's supposed to be super book smart, like ridiculously book smart. I mean, she was to go to the scribe quadrant. She read a lot of books. She's very smart. Sometimes that comes out. Sometimes that just get lost in translation because she's trying to become street smart. Like in D&D, the wisdom and the intelligence skill, it's not balanced with Violet. But because she suffers the main character syndrome, it's like she's very slippery to grasp as a main character.
She's slippery.
It's just hard. And then you get to the dragons, and the first time you meet the dragons is really cool because they just the dragons are cool, but then they could kind of like not visually, but in my opinion, as like the character, they get kind of Disney-fied, kind of yassified, sort of, because you have this badass dragon, biggest dragon that's currently able to bond, right? He chooses her. It's like this really cool, it's like, oh my god, she gets the big badass, I mean, it was kind of, you could guess, but still, she gets the big badass dragon, And from then on, he's just continuously annoyed with her. And it's like unproductive. Like,
Yeah.
why did you choose her if you're constantly unhappy with her skill? And he's constantly like, Violet, I choose you for your wit. I choose you for all of this. Like, come on, step it up, girl. And it's, there's some characters in the book who are like, shoot, you don't deserve that dragon. I'm like, yeah, she doesn't deserve the dragon, honestly. Should have bonded to somebody else.
No, you know what I think? I think he chose her because he could already smell that, like, Zayden and Violet were about to fuck in the near future, and he was like, oh, I like Zayden's dragon, though, so...
He chooses her because she decides to go out of her way to save a small dragon, like a fragile little dragon that she later finds out is actually a baby dragon. And she, like, stands up against 3 guys who will... One of them has been wanting to kill her for a while, and the other 2 are just also very on board with killing her. So she's like, shit, I'm gonna die. I want to defend this dragon. And then the big dragon comes along, and he's like, well, I'm gonna take care of the situation. So he's like sort of impressed by her heart and valor on all of that.
I was about to say, that doesn't sound like he's impressed with her wit, though. Like, it would be impressive if, as the underdog, she had won, and then he chose her. Like, if she'd used her intelligence to outsmart people physically stronger than her. But this literally, like, he was just like, oh, you're protecting a baby dragon. I guess that's nice.
The interesting thing is that she has scenes throughout the book where she does go about things the smart way. There's an interesting aspect in which she gets a book that her dead brother wrote for her sister when she became a dragon rider. And her sister put notes in that book as well. So you have the advice from her brother, her sister's notes, and that book then gets gifted to Violet. So she has like this little manual of trying to get around the college without dying. And one thing she does start is she figures out the schedule for fights, who will fight against who, like sparring. And she starts to poison those people because she's smart. And she kind of figures out, okay, what poisons work, which do not, when do I have to administer them. So she's able to actually fight against them without immediately getting annihilated by them. So she does use her wits and bounce, but not always. That's why I said slippery. Like, it's very... Violet as a character is just very hard to kind of grasp, in my opinion. She feels more like a YN, you know, like a...
Yeah.
This is your... It's like... I think that's maybe why so many people like the book as well, because it's so easy to insert yourself into Violet, because she has so many faces and character traits. It's like a horoscope. At some point, one of the things she does, you're gonna relate with, and then you put yourself into her shoes. But
and, I mean, the average, you know, romantasy enthusiast is also gonna be there and be like, oh yeah, I would want to fuck Zayden Ryerson. Sure, yeah, he's great. I'm into that.
Still, one of my favorite things about this whole thing is that Violet is very convinced that Zayden is out to get her and to kill her. The first time they meet, she's like, oh shit, that this guy wants to kill me. My mom killed his father. His father killed my brother. There's like a family feud here. And also, you know, we did condemn them to be outcasts. He wants to kill me. But from Zayden's POV, probably, he's just fucking annoyed with this girl because she's just screaming and running away whenever she sees him in a hallway. Like, there's literally a scene where they walk into a room, she and a friend, and he, like, is one story higher, and he comes up and he just looks at her all mean and menacingly, and she thinks he's going to kill her in that moment, and she runs away. She's like, whoosh! And
that's embarrassing.
He's just
for
standing
her.
there. He's just
oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. So he even says, he's like, I would never think about like sure, I have anger for everything that has happened to my family and all that, for your family as well, but like, I would never want to impose what has been done to me to somebody else to suffer for the consequences of their parents, you know?
Yeah.
So he's number one person of I would never do that. So honestly, yeah. And just the very weird set. There's just lots of things in Fourth Wing that are weird. Like the whole, oh, dragon riders are so rare and we have to like really take care to choose the best ones and like foster them, have them become more super soldiers. But then killing your classmates is completely normal. The only people you're not allowed to kill are your squad mates, because that's like would be like treason, basically. You're only allowed to kill the other ones, and there's like super deadly tasks that they have to go through, and it's all being justified by this, well, we're badass. It's just,
yeah,
it makes no sense. At the end of the book, it's like, oh, since all of the traitors' kids were was it conscripted to the school, it's like to make sure that they die, so that's why so many people die. But you put your own children there. Like, not just the traitor children, your own children
you can just
as well.
Kill them. You know?
Like,
they're traitors. You can just like be like, yeah, they're traitors. That's why we killed them. Like, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And every single time people say, oh, but the dragons justify reading the whole book, I'm like, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't. In the beginning, the dragons feel very ominous and scary and like powerful. But as soon as she bonds to her dragon, it feels like a gimmick and not really like a cool thing.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, with a lot of these books, it feels like people just, you know, see a part of the premise they like and then are convinced because of that the book has to be good. Which is like, no, there are a lot of books with dragons. There's even more romantasy with dragons. It's not that rare. Like, dragons are a staple of fantasy fiction.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard to find better books with better dragons. Like, straight up, it's not hard.
I don't want to... I know that Fourth Wing is important to a lot of readers. It's one of the books that has gotten a lot of people back into reading because the hype was just so big, so people were like, all right, I'm gonna go. And there's certain entertaining aspects about it. Like, I didn't suffer immense pain while reading the book. It's just I was constantly like shaking my head, going like, what the fuck is going on here? It just, I don't know. It's a burn for me, because when I did start the rewrite for it, I was like, there's so many things here I would change that it wouldn't be the same book anymore.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even be close to it. So
yeah, no, I do get that. And I mean, that would also be fair, I guess. You could do that, but I also understand that it's not very appealing to be like, nah.
Yeah.
It's too much work.
So, if you have been tricked by especially the book talk kind of marketing into thinking that, oh, it's like a shadow daddy situation, to me it didn't feel like that. To me it felt like a huge miscommunication trope, to be honest.
I think he's just emo and people just don't get that.
Yeah, he's a stressed dude. Like, he's responsible for all of these kids.
I also, like, I will straight up say, I don't get the hype around the Shadow Daddy specific archetype, because I'm like, if you want a dumb-coded character, there are thousands of them. Do they specifically have to have shadow powers? Like, is that a specific niche and kink that's very prevalent? Or did you just like recent Night Court, but you're scared of reading fan fiction, so you're just trying to find something similar? In which case, just read fan fiction, man. There's a lot of it out there. It's a popular series. Like,
dang, that was, I mean, honestly, I could imagine, yeah, that was the case. Especially because a lot of times with these shadow daddy tropes, we don't see the shadow of the daddy, you know? We have the tall, dark, handsome, but not too dark, because it's, you know, where we're not having anything interracial
then
going on here.
Then it's too problematic. You can't have too many red flags.
No. Just, oh my god. just olive skin, okay? Olive skin. But and they have like
loose... Oh, that's what you meant with too dark? I thought you meant like thematically or like from what they've done. No, but you just meant skin tone. No, of course he needs to be a white coated guy. Like,
yeah.
Maybe ambiguous, like maybe Italian skin tone, but like not a person of color.
Yeah, that's not. But of course yours is valid too. Like it's not allowed to be too toxic, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, or even then, like the toxic parts are not like. You don't see him, and they're like, I mean, look at Lightlark, right?
Yeah.
Grimm is like, sure, if you like objectively think about what he does, sounds pretty bad, but like what he does on screen is like pathetic ass shit. Like it's not particularly threatening, or like compared to everyone else, it's just like, yeah, everyone here is a murderer. Yeah. Like everyone's been in a war. You're not special. Like, sorry.
Especially putting that into the context of the whole world. Yes. But Grimm is one of the few ones who actually uses his shadow powers, and you're like, oh, that's a shadow wielder. Oh my god! But in a lot of these,
he also feels like one of the more obvious Rysand clones. Yeah. To be fair, though.
I mean, yeah, of course.
Or he's like some kind of unholy abomination child between Rysand and the Darkling. Because, like, there are parts of his vibe where I'm like, yeah. I saw, like, a reviewer who talked about how, like, from the time when she wrote it and, like, some aspects where I was like, actually, yeah, that does sound a lot more like the Darkling than Rysand. But then it got, like, a Rysand skin over top, you know?
It's like the aesthetic of Rysand, or Reese's Puffs.
I don't know. Like, listen, okay? My internal, like... inclination to read names is very German, and then I hear English people talk about it, and I'm like, oh, is that how I'm supposed to pronounce it?
But yeah, that's all for my burn. I feel like if you want to give it a try to get it from a library first, I'd say, and see if you like it. I did look up a couple of review videos and summaries of Iron Flame, and I do not feel like it gets better. So enjoy yourself with Fourth Wing, and if you get hooked on the story, I think then you can go with Iron Flame. But that's my last verdict on this one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a deserved burn, I think.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So what's your burn?
My burn is actually Shatter Me.
Ooh.
Yeah, so let's go look at the summary.
Yes.
Juliet hasn't touched anyone in exactly 264 days. The last time she did, it was an accident, but the re-establishment locked her up for murder. No one knows why Juliet's touch is fatal. As long as she doesn't hurt anyone else, no one really cares. The world is too busy crumbling to pieces to pay attention to a 17-year-old girl. Diseases are destroying the population, food is hard to find, birds don't fly anymore, and the clouds are the wrong color. The re-establishment said their way was the only way to fix things, so they threw Juliet in a cell. Now, so many people are dead that the survivors are whispering war, and the re-establishment has changed its mind. Maybe Juliet is more than a tortured soul stuffed into a poisonous body. Maybe she's exactly what they need right now. Juliet has to make a choice, be a weapon or a warrior. This summary is misleading. I have not read it before, I just copy-pasted it from Goodreads, but like, no, this is not accurate entirely.
So, is there like a fantasy aspect to it because she has a superpower, or is it like a mutant kind of... No,
it's more like, you know, it's dystopian, so they're calling it mutation. It is kind of a superpower, but you know... They're trying to be like, oh yeah, some people just have mutations that let them have like... So they're just born with crazy
X-Men
powers.
Mutations?
Yeah, kind of like that. You know, you just have weird... It's not explained. The world building of Shatter Me is like abysmal. It's not good. But yeah, the summary... Okay. I mean, technically it's not incorrect, I suppose. But it's also, like, the vibes are off. Because, like, the book is kind of, well, first off, it's kind of boring.
Oh.
Because Juliet sucks as a protagonist, but also for a world that's, like, on the brink of,
Death.
Yeah.
Destruction.
At the brink of, like, annihilation of, like, life. They don't do anything with that. Everything, everything you learn about any part of the world is insane. Like, at the beginning, Juliet is locked up in an insane asylum because...
literally?
Yeah, no, she literally... Which, like, at first is actually, like, kind of interesting because she's in solitary confinement. The only thing she has is, like, a little book and a pen. And she writes a lot and she doesn't talk because she has no one to talk to. And, like, that's interesting. Good idea. But, like, the place she's locked up in is, like, stupid. Because, like... She never sees any guards. When there's, like... Sometimes they give her food, but not regularly. When there's, like, shower time, they just open her door, and she has to find her way through the dark hallways to the shower room, and shower in the dark, and then go back to her own... It's stupid.
Wouldn't she by now know where she needs to go? Like, how long has she been there?
I mean, 264 days,
So she should know, even if it's
dark.
No,
she does know now, but, like, imagine you're locked up there and they just randomly open your door and you don't even know what you're supposed to do because nobody tells you, right?
That is a bit fucked up. I agree.
It's just stupid. Like, what do you mean? You're just letting them run around. You can't even make sure they go back to their cell afterwards. What do you mean?
Well, maybe it's like their little mice experiment, They watch it from
they're
top.
just like, let's just see what these insane people do. Like, that's funny. But, yeah, then... One day, a hot dude gets also put into her cell, and he, like, is, like, kind of an asshole at first, but then, like, she shows him where the shower is and everything, and, like, they bond a little bit, whatever.
In the shower.
Unfortunately, no, they don't do that because she can't touch people, right? She's scared of killing people with her touch.
Yeah. Wait, is that the Aaron Warner guy?
No, I think his name is Adam, maybe? He's like the nice guy love interest.
Okay.
Warner is the evil guy love interest. He's like the bad boy. Adam has like dark hair and like Warner is a blonde bitch, Anyway, yeah, at some point, like, she gets, like, brought out of her room and in front of Warner, who tells her, like, hey, I've heard about your powers and I think you could be super useful. You're now coming to live with me at my military outpost, because I'm 19? I don't remember. He's also a teenager, but his dad runs the reestablishment, so he's been allowed, like, control of a whole sector or something.
Oh, he's a Nepo baby. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Nepo baby, which is funny, because his father hates him, so I'm like, why is he getting nepotism benefits when his father doesn't even like him?
Maybe the father hopes that he can just get his son, like, promoted to very far away.
Yeah, it's just silly. Like, later on in the series, you find out, like, Warner didn't actually plan to use her as a weapon. He wanted to study her powers, because, like, plot-relevant reasons, but, like, he wasn't actually that bad a guy from the... And then, like, after we spend, like, a lot of pages for what it is in the asylum, we then spend a lot of pages in, like, the military outpost where Warner lives, which is very lavishly decorated, and Julia's like, wow, it's crazy, these people live with all this lavish stuff when, like, food is scarce. But a lot of the stuff that's described is, like, gold and beautiful old paintings, and I'm like, well, you can't eat that, so I don't know how much worth this would have in an economy where people are starving, but okay. It's like, it's very silly. And, then we spend a lot of time at this outpost, and then eventually, like, Adam helps Juliet, like, run away. They get almost caught by Warner. She pretends to, like, be into Warner and makes out with him, and then shoots him with his own gun, which is very funny. Like...
it's quite the concept.
It's embarrassing for him, honestly, and his father demotes him afterwards because he's also like, that's pathetic, dude. But yeah, and then they find like the resistance or whatever. It's just like the world building is so bad. it can in parts be summed up by the fact that the author decided it's the future. So they have
That's it.
tanks that run with electric motors, which makes them near silent for some reason. And also, they can turn invisible with, like, cloaking tech. And that's, like, the kind of, futurism we're talking about. The dumbest shit imaginable. And they just use them like cars. They call them tanks, but it's like,
It's a car. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it also has weaponry, but I'm like, you're just using this to drive around, though? Like, why is it a tank? Why isn't it an all-terrain car? What do you mean?
I'm thinking about, like, for example, the Mako or the Nomad from Mass Effect, which, are, like, fortified
like
cars for
real
all terrains.
sci-fi.
And they have, like, one of them has a gigantic big-ass gun on top. So it kind of could be a tank, but calling it a tank, but actually
it's so silly. It's so everything about it is just stupid. You
Because
need to consider this is just dumb. Like all of it is stupid. Juliet especially is also not very bright. Like that's also very important to remember. It's just not good. Like
is she not very bright on purpose, or is it like a case with Violet where it's like, oh, she's supposed to be smart, but she's lacking a lot of times?
She's not even supposed to be smart. Like the draw for her is that she's a very kind person, but people are in intense pain when she touches them, and then it kills them if she holds on for too long.
So she doesn't
and she feels
them.
super guilty for accidentally killing a kid when touching them because she didn't know this would happen.
Yeah.
So like she's like sad about it. And that's like her thing. She's like, oh, she's so kind and wants to help people, but also she's deadly,
She can't touch them. Yeah.
And of course, like, Adam turns out has a mutation which makes him immune to other people's stuff, so she can't hurt him. Yeah. And then later it turns out Warner also has some kind of mutation which makes it that she can't hurt him, but his is that he can, like, I think take people's power and, like, use it instead, so it's like, it's stupid. It's just an excuse so they can make out and, like, they're not in pain. That's like...
I like the trope of somebody touching someone else and them... Oh, that sounds bad. Them dying.
That part of it is interesting.
It's an interesting trope. Like, pushing daisies is fun. We have Rogue with the X-Men, who has the same powers or curse as she thinks it. But... you have to do something interesting with that. And I feel like, at least from what you're saying, they don't do something interesting with that.
Shatter, again, like, you need to consider that everything about Shatter Me is the dumbest possible version that it could be.
Oh, damn.
The focus is obviously on the romance.
Yeah.
Like, she and Adam have several conversations in the shower because it's the only room in her, like, apartment, like, in her, like, suite.
Little prison
that's not bugged and doesn't have cameras. So, it's just like, whatever.
It's so, I mean, from a humanitarian standpoint, it's nice that this prison does not have cameras in the shower.
That's when they're at the outpost. Like, the prison doesn't have cameras, I think, generally, because they don't give a shit. They just lock these people up and they're like,
okay.
I mean, again, very strange prison. Very confusing.
I mean, but that would probably be revealed in how long is this series? Like 8 books or something? Shatter Me is long, right?
Well, the original is just 3 books. Like, it's the trilogy is complete in and of itself, even though the ending is very open. Then there's, like, novellas or books set in between with other protagonists. And then later, like, years after the 3rd one came out, she started writing more books in the series. Which makes sense, because the final ending was very open, but also is a funny choice given that the relevance of the series has, like, passed.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not
it's not good. It was popular because it was, like, the dystopian boom. And, like, Warner is fun. He's, like, the best character. He's interesting. He's fun.
Yeah.
I love me a little bitch who's, he's, like, he's an asshole, but actually he has a super sad backstory, and actually he's not that much of a bad... I love that for him.
I feel like...
Very cute.
Yeah. I feel like with books like this, it becomes quite apparent whether the author wanted to write the story because of the main character and the story itself, or because of the love interest. Because I mean, if he is such an enjoyable part of, it's like a pattern, you know.
These books are written as to facilitate the enemies to friends to lovers of Juliet and Warner. That's what this is for. And it's, like, written in a way that, like, he'll be in love with her first and try really hard to be, like, nicer and, like, open up to her, and then she also falls in love. Because her previous boyfriend turns out to not be that great.
No, that do be happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's the core of the books, and, like, I mean, that part's fun. There's other characters with wacky powers, like, there's other stuff happening, but, like, especially the first book is, like, mostly about Juliet's and Adam's romance, which is just not engaging at all.
Yeah.
He's so boring. He has nothing to offer. I think they know each other from, like, school, like, they've seen each other before. And, like, it's just not interesting, man. She's not that interesting when she's interacting with him, and he's boring as shit. He sucks. A bad character. I don't like him.
I feel like that's such an untapped potential in these kind of stories. If you plan on having like a first romance and then the actual romance, make us care somewhat about this first romance, because otherwise we're just gonna be like, okay, now we have this other character that we can smell from a mile away as supposed to be the actual like love interest. At least make the time worth reading about the first one, I guess.
I mean, I think like it depends on your taste. Like, I think from a story standpoint, like, it makes sense. Like, he's, like, the first person to be nice to her, you know, after, like, she's guilty. And, like, yeah, he's not bad. I just think he's incredibly boring. And, like, again, he has very little to offer. And it's very... At the beginning, I feel like in the first book, you can't tell yet which one will be the endgame love interest. But after the second book, I feel like it's super obvious that it's Warner.
Did you read all three?
Because, like, Adam also has, like, the negative character development of becoming, like, kind of possessive and, like, really weird about, you know, overprotective and stuff. And it's like, yeah.
We enjoy that. So you read all three of them?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know how it ended. And also I was like, oh, yeah, I want Warner to be happy. He's, like, I like him.
She says
He's a
with
little
a big
guy.
sigh. Yeah.
Don't mind the war crime. Don't mind the atrocities. He's just a little guy. He had to do them. Because his father would have killed him otherwise. You know, you don't get it.
You just don't get it. Yeah, but it all sounds fair, honestly. I don't mind, to be honest, if fantasy, but especially sci-fi worlds, if authors decide to just not go into too much detail about how the sci-fi works. Because either it gets lost in some weird mumbo-jumbo of pseudoscience that where it's like, science doesn't work like that, at least not from the current standpoint of you, so your technology means ass. Or it does work because it's like based on like hard science, but it's like hard science fiction kind of sort of, but it's still too complicated. So I appreciate sometimes if a sci-fi author says, you know what, we're not gonna look into that. But
I mean, yeah, but like, this isn't like
if it's
real
like a half,
sci-fi. It's dystopian. Yeah. So it's
like a half-assed kind of...
It's too close to modern times to have anything truly interesting. So the new inventions are mostly just kind of stupid. And everything else is like too close to reality to ignore how dumb it is. Like, again, part of the description that like, yeah, but most life is dying, and I'm like, then how are they sustaining any kind of popular... Like, it just gets crazier, like, the more you think about how, like, detrimental it would be when plants and animals would start dying en masse. Like, it's just not...
When was Shatter Me published, or, like, written? It's quite old, right?
I would have said early 2010s or earlier. I can look it up. I can look.
Because I wonder whether, you know, it's like that was the extent of Oh yeah, that's what I think. Like it's a very surface thought that the world building was based on.
Yeah,
and they
first
didn't.
published 2011. Yeah,
Oh,
so early 2010s.
we already had electric cars in 2011. I think. Yeah, no, because that was a thought. It's like, oh, it was published in like 2003 or something. It's like, okay,
yeah,
whatever,
but also it's not the motor itself that makes a tank very loud. Like,
I know.
I'm very sorry, but that's not how we fix the fact that tanks are loud as fuck. Okay.
I do love the little noise that electric cars make, because it does sound very sci-fi and very like, you know, when you drive on yourself, it's like, oh, it does make a cute little sound. But yeah, they are quite quiet compared to a normal car, but they're not like so quiet that you can't hear them. You know, it's still, there's lots of mechanics going on inside that move.
But also, again, a lot of the noise a tank makes is not the motor. It's the rest of the parts.
Yeah, of course.
They're not built for stealth. Here. Like, I have news for you, but they are not.
A stealth tank, imagine.
Unfortunately not, yeah. It's
also really fun. Now we're getting into, like sci-fi technology and stuff here. But it's also really fun because it depends on what kind of, invisibility technology is being used here. And who do you try to hide from? Like, are we hiding from machines who can signal your cars? Do we try to hide from humans so they just don't see your car? Who are we hiding from? How does the cloaking device work? Like that's important, you know, because
it is, yeah.
That gets my gears grinding, because that has nothing to do with appreciating that sci-fi authors don't give us information. That has to do with plot holes who are holding too much. I think, which review was it? I think it was on Lightlark or something. But somebody gave like a 1-star review being like, oh, this triggered my trypophobia because of all the plot holes in it. I always have to think of that now when I read plot holes anywhere.
That's so funny.
Or think about that. Yeah, it's a good 1-star comment.
But yeah, no, like, Shatter Me is not worth it. Like, I don't understand how it got that popular, quite frankly. Like,
how does
the best part about it is Warner, and he's like fun or whatever, but he's not special. There are hundreds of bad boys like him in YA. He's not unique. Like, sorry, but like, again, there are so many like him.
Bad boy fish in the literature ocean.
Yeah, I can only assume it was because people were obsessed with dystopian at the time.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
but the dystopia is really bad.
I feel like dystopia was going down a little bit already, but it was still very popular enough for a series like this to, like, be successful.
Yeah.
What does the title relate to? Shatter Me. Do they ever like? Is it ever like name dropped in the book, or is it like she feels like she shatters people? Is she being shattered?
I mean, first off, it's been years. I don't really remember,
that's okay.
But I think it could refer to, like, you know, breaking through her shell where she's like, no, I won't interact with people. I'm gonna, you know, shut myself off from the world or something. Because I think the last one, Ignite Me, there is a reference in the text to that. But, like, I don't think the title's
That's fine. That was a very, like, out of bounds question. I was like, why is it called Shatter Me? Because I thought...
Because it's a good name, I think.
Because it was like, it is a good name. Like, it evokes some kind of emotion in you if you see it and you're like, oh, damn, what's the book about? And I knew that she had some sort of superpower, but Shatter Me, I always thought she had some sort of, like, energy kind of superpower.
I mean, it is. Like, later on in the series, it's real that, like, oh, her touch isn't, like, for killing. It's just that, like, she takes energy from some people, or rather, she's so full of energy, like she pushes it into other people, like when they touch her, it's like a self-protective mechanism.
Yeah.
Like it fries people that touch her because like she's scared or whatever, and she learns to control it and turn it into a force field and stuff, but that's stupid. Like again, it would be a lot more interesting if it was like, you know, it can be a weapon if you manage to touch people, but also it has invariably these specific drawbacks. But then it's like, oh no, I learned to control it and now I can touch people. Yay! Which is like, okay, I guess that's some kind of development, but it's not, you know, interesting.
It kind of takes away from
it's very basic. It's like, wow, yeah, the problems are gone. Cool.
Yeah. Because it's interesting and fun and like kind of rewarding to read about stories of people overcoming an issue or a problem, but I think it's equally interesting, if not more, to read about people kind of becoming comfortable with an issue and learning to live with that.
Yeah, I also, like, again, it's like, I feel like especially if you do like superpowers and stuff like that, it's like they're always more interesting if they have limitations and drawbacks. Because then you have to deal with those. Like, then it's like a trade-off. You get power, but also it costs you. And if it's just like, no, you just get free power, have fun. You know, it's like, okay, I guess you can do that, but it's not interesting.
I still think one of the funniest, like, happenings in the... not MCU, because I don't mean the cinematic universe, I mean Marvel universe in general, is that you have all these superheroes are being like praised for what they are and what they can do, and then you have the mutant comics who are being like shunned by the public because they're mutants, and it's like, okay, but Mr. Super Soldier, Captain America is fine, like all of them can do bad and good, but this specific group, like, of course it's inside of the X-Men comics, it has its merits and importance to be there, but if you start doing multiple characters in one comics, it gets kind of ridiculous. If you just say all these people
live in the same world, it's like, wait, but...
all of them live in New York, and you're like, damn.
Why is no one trying to lynch the Flash, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait, he's DC, but, like, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it's the same. Yeah, they're silver. Not silver.
Yeah, they have an equivalent, I assume.
Yeah.
But, like, why is no one trying to, you know, kill other people? Like, why are people fans of... I don't know MCU heroes, because I don't care about superheroes.
I mean, we have, for example, Spider-Man has his own group of people who do not like him, but at the same time, you have even more people who love him because he is the neighborhood he's just a little superhero. Guy.
Yeah,
I love Spider-Man. He's honestly, I think, my favorite of all of them. But yeah, enough of that. But it's the same thing with this Shatter Me thing. It's like, oh, okay, you have other problems. I mean, I understand just throwing them into a pit, but why not just kill them? Like, which leads us to the one thing, like with Fourth Wing. Why not just kill them?
Why not just kill them? Yeah, honestly, sometimes it's like,
why throw them into this obscure sci-fi prison?
Why just put them in, like, I don't think it was even prison. I think it was an insane asylum, because, like, they pretended that her powers weren't real or whatever. They were just like, oh yeah, she just killed a kid. Like, they pretended that, like, the touching just wasn't, that it didn't happen through powers. They were just like, yeah, she just killed a kid. And everyone was like, wait, she was so normal. What do you mean she killed a kid?
Maybe it was a research facility. Because, like,
no,
why would you accidentally, upon chance, put the one guy who can't be killed by her into the same room with her?
I mean, no, there it was like Warner sent him in to be like, hey, check if she's insane, because, you know, she's been stuck in there for a while, and like, she killed a kid, so like, we gotta check if she's useful, like, if you can even have a conversation. So, you know.
I thought he could just spawn there by the prison guards who were like, tee
No, Warner was like, hey, check if she's too crazy to, you know, talk to and threaten into working with me.
I see.
And it turned out she wasn't. She was just, you know, traumatized.
Just a girl.
Which was like, yeah.
Just a teenage girl in a huge world.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to venture forth
Yeah,
to the...
fourth, not towards fifth wing, but something else entirely.
Well, ninth house.
Yeah, we're sticking with the numbers. We're like, yeah, the numbers go up.
Oh my god, yes! Like 3 dark crowns, fourth wing.
Oh my god!
Oh, I do not have
I
a book
didn't
with a
realize that.
5.
Oh, that's so funny. Unfortunately, 3 plus 4 does not equal 9. Otherwise, this would have been even better.
This would have been... Okay. That's so funny. Okay.
It's fate.
Ninth house. By the way, I do not know, is it 9th or 9th? I always fuck that one up. 9th. It's the one number that I struggle so hard to both speak, but in general. Okay, 9th house. Le Bardugo. Welcome to the 9th house. Galaxy Alex Stern is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. A dropout and the sole survivor of a horrific unsolved crime, Alex was hoping for a fresh start. But her free ride comes with a catch. She has been tasked with monitoring Yale's secret societies, notorious haunts of the rich and powerful. Now, there's a dead girl on campus, and Alex is the only person willing to look deeper, because the societies are far more sinister and extraordinary than anyone ever imagined. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. This was the adult debut of Le Bardugo, so the first adult anything book she published after the Grishaverse books.
Mm-hmm.
And I it's funny because on the cover it says impossible to put down Stephen King. I had to put this book down several times while I read it. I remember that. And I feel a bit bad because I think under one of our videos somebody commented saying, "Oh, you guys would definitely
recently,
enjoy
under the
House."
Six of Crows one. I think they were like, "Hey, do you know about this book by Andy Bardugo?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've heard very mixed things. Most of them not great."
And I felt when I read this, Ninth House has a lot of things that should work out perfectly on paper. Mm-hmm. It has the dark academia aesthetic. You have this, oh, we're at this big university. We're at Yale, you know. It's like this institution. The aesthetic is nice. We have secret societies in there. We have old money people doing old money things. We have some magic in there, not exorcisms, but like ghost stuff. And this typical theme of rich people will do things that you kind of expected them to do, but still once you find out, you're so fucking disgusted by what they are doing.
Yeah.
It's unhinged. And I picked this book up with the highest intention of loving it. Mm. Really. I picked it up and was like, really oh my god. Yeah, I also really like the premise, and I love Le Bardugo, so I'm like, all right, let's go.
Surely this will be good.
Surely this will be good. And then it wasn't for me. It wasn't good. We start with, so apart from the fact that Galaxy Alex
it's
Stern
a terrible name.
I think her name was just Galaxy Stern, and because she hated being called Galaxy, she kind of turned it into Alex.
Which is like, okay, but like you could just call her like Alexandra or whatever, which is also an annoying name, which is very long, and you can just call yourself Alex. Like,
it's, when we start, the reason why Alex gets this free pass into Yale is because she becomes part of one of these secret societies called the Ninth House, or also called Lethe, which is the one house that kind of monitors all of the other greats, which they call the greats houses, who each have their own different brand of magic. Like, some of them, which is, if you think about it, kind of sounds like funky, but yeah, I would expect this is what rich people do. One of them, for example, one of the houses does procrastinations. Like, they take apart a body, they use that body for some kind of oracle magic, and what they take from that are stock markets information.
That's
They're
so
like,
funny.
oh yeah, we found this and this out, you should invest in this and this, and then you get rich. And they sell that information to the alumni and to the people involved in the house. So it sounds funky, but that's absolutely what I expect somebody with that kind of
this
money.
is real. This is a very funny thing to do, and it's like yeah,
you know,
rich people would be unimaginative enough to be like, hey, you know what we should use this for? Money.
To do with it. So those are the kind of things these houses do, and of course you could do a lot of bad things with that. So they're being all kept in check by the ninth house. And Alex is important.
Did they ever say why it's called Lethe? Because, like, the river Lethe is the river you dunked in to remove your memories before you joined the dead. So it's like, what do you mean? Why are they about forgetting if they're supposed to be monitoring?
I think there's some part about it, but I forgot. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I was just like, wait, what?
No, that's a valid concern. Alex got a free card into college because she's something you would call a wheel walker. It's a person that can see ghosts. And that is essential to have in this house because the ghosts, they call them the Greys. So like just souls from deceased people, but you know, you would associate them with ghosts. They are attracted to all kinds of magic and energy. And they can interrupt and intercept all kinds of rituals, which is why with some things, for example, these stock market oracle sessions with dead people should be guarded by people from the ninth house, so none of the Greys intercept with it, but they also kind of investigate and you know, being able to see this in-between layer of dead souls is kind of very useful for that. So that's how she gets in to the whole thing. And she has a mentor in the House of Lethe, and they always have like code names for certain roles in there, like Kingsman kind of style, you know.
Yeah.
An agent has a knight name. In their case, they're like literature connected, so you have Dante and Virgil. And I think it was the Dante is the mentor and the Virgil is the student. And after 3 years, the old Virgil becomes the new Dante, and the new Dante then usually graduates out of school and goes on to doing other things. And so she becomes a new Virgil. Her Dante is, in my opinion, the most interesting character in the whole book. His name is Daniel, but he's usually called Darlington. And he's like the typical snarky old money kind of dude you would expect to be at a university like this, but at the same time he's not non-empathetic. So it's like, it's this kind of person that if you met them in real life you'd be like, you're on thin ice, my man, but you'd still kind of find that person charming because they are. And what's interesting about the book is that we have it back and forth. We start the book with Alex being like, well, I would for sure like some guidance in this situation, but my Dante has disappeared. He's gone. Now I'm a Virgil with nearly no training, and I'm just here. And you, throughout the book, you find out where Darlington went, and you always have like a switch between not POVs, but between times with Alex. And the big mystery of the book is, but I get introduced in the beginning, is that a girl died, and Alex has been sent there by the ninth house to investigate that murder. Just a quick little look, just to see maybe her ghost is hanging around, you know, whatever, just go. And she immediately notices that something is fishy about this case, and she, throughout the whole book, tries to solve this murder mystery. At the same time, there's the plot of Darlington disappearing, and we're kind of trying to find out what goes down there. And then Alex has a very traumatic past, like legit very traumatic, that she kind of also tries to handle at the same time, and like the trauma that comes from that. And then there's an underlying bigger picture plot that also gets put into there, and it's just too much. It's too much. It's convoluted, and I feel like in some books, Leigh is not very good at pacing. Like, she gets away with it in Six of Crows, but in Crooked Kingdom, it's already a little bit noticeable. In the...
I mean, Ruin and Rising also has some abysmal pacing.
I was about to say, in the Shadow and Bone books, the pacing is off. I felt like in Rule of Wolves and King of Scars, the pacing was bad as well. So Ninth House also suffers from that. And it's kind of disappointing because Leigh is such a good author when it comes to character interactions, but because for half of the book our main other guy, Darlington, isn't there, Galaxy has to bounce all of these other characters that are in the book, but none of them are engaging. And to be honest, Alex herself isn't engaging as well. I feel like she tried to write the tragically traumatized character and she badly failed. I'm sorry to say this.
No, I mean, that's fair. Like, yeah, I mean, what I've heard of it from, like, people who are much more critical readers than, like, you, but also than me, they've been like, yeah, it's not good.
I'm trying to find real fast if there's trigger warnings in my book, but...
They should be at the front, right?
I just looked in the front, they aren't. There's... No? That's all lexicon. In the front, there's just a... Hey, I know this is taking place at Yale, but please don't sue me, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, the societies of Yale University and their prestigious alumni are very real, but characters and events described are of the author's imagination. And as far as I know, no one has ever used magic to fix an election. That's what she wrote. But no, there are no trigger warnings. And from here on, I guess, spoilers for Ninth House. But Alex, because she can see these ghosts, she's not only able to see them, but they are able to interact with her. And that shouldn't be possible. They shouldn't be able to grab her. They shouldn't be able to have, like, corporeal forms that can interact with her. And when she, like, she started seeing them when she was around, like, a very young child. And when she is, did I say her age? She gets her first period as a child. And because the Greys are attracted to blood in a sort of kind of, like, weird, curious way, she gets assaulted by one and actually raped as a child by one of these ghosts. It's not graphically described, thank God, but it totally is like, oh damn, okay, what the fuck? It just gets thrown in there, just like that, in the middle of the book. Because she at several times is like, I've been let down by this Ninth House, because they've been monitoring me since I was a child to snatch me up once I'm an adult to put me in here, but they never once cared for me enough to like save me from these traumatic situations. And when we then find out what that situation was, it feels like it's coming completely out of the blue, at least for me. That was weird. But it's the reason why she then starts taking drugs as a teenager, because if she's taking drugs, she can't see the Greys. So she's like, oh, then they can't hurt me, right? If I can't perceive them, they don't exist. I'm inhibited of using my powers, then that can't be happening. And she kind of gets into the wrong crew through her ex-boyfriend. He's a drug dealer. He regularly sells her and her friend to other men to kind of make drug deals and stuff. So basically he's her pimp in that instance. And he's also very violent with her, like physically violent. And there's one situation where he wants her to go to a certain deal, and she's like, the first time she like speaks after, she's like, I don't want to. I really don't want to go. Yeah. And before he can threaten bigger violence on her, her friend says, you know what, I'm gonna go, because she's also involved in the whole thing as a victim. And when she then later comes back to their hangout spot, their flat, Ground Zero it's called in the book, she finds out that her friend was abused and very violently killed, drugged, raped, is dead. And so this is something Alex knows from the beginning. We now only find out as a reader. Alex can actually be possessed by Greys, which is one of the reasons why they can also like interact with her. So she gets possessed by her dead friend's soul and goes on a massacre, killing everybody inside of that flat. It's very graphically described, the killing, like the blood, the stabbing, everything. And then she goes, her friend who's inside of her takes her to a river, baths her. It's a very like literally and mentally cleansing situation for Alex. So she cannot be linked to the murder. They're like, well, she's too fragile and she doesn't have any blood on her and everything. And then the ghost disappears and she's like, oh damn, this is all too crazy. And shortly after that, she gets picked up by the ninth house. That's sort of trauma dumping happens as a literal dump. You have a whole book of Alex being very traumatized, very cautious, running back and forth on the Yale campus. There's a map in here for the campus. And I'm like, why did I put a map in here? Well, because she walks a lot. And these two instances throughout the book, you get the rape scene when she's a child, and you get the clusterfuck of what happened to her in the past. And it's a lot. It's a lot. She goes through this whole convoluted... Oh, I haven't even mentioned this yet. She goes through this whole convoluted murder plot. And it starts with, girl dies. What happened? Very quickly, she figures out, kind of Darlington was maybe involved with this as well. How does she figure it out? She gets attacked by a ghost from another society, but another ghost kind of battles against the ghost and wins. She's just like, a ghost saved me, that's nice, but honestly I don't want to have anything to do with you. That ghost is very persistent, and actually connects with her and is like, I have information that could help you, but I want to deal with you. And the deal is, you find out how my darling girlfriend wife died. It's a deal. And she's like, okay, it's a deal. And Darlington was investigating the death of this ghost's wife. So it's like, oh, okay, we have an angle that we're working here. There's a lot of convoluted going from society to society to kind of show the societies off a little bit, what they do, with Alex just finding out about ye old regular fuck-ups that happen at these kind of universities, like students drugging each other, abusing each other. There's always the kind of magical, fantastical aspect to it. Like, it's not a normal drug, it's a fantastic drug, but in the end, it's basically a date rape trope. It's not trope, it's a date rape situation that goes on in that. I guess in dark romance is a trope.
The common literary device of the date rape, yeah.
Oh my god. And in the end, we find out that each of the societies, we knew this before, each of the societies is like physically based on something called a nexus, which is like an open gate to more magic. And the first nexus happened when the wife of the ghost died. Daisy was her name. When Daisy died, the first nexus on campus was created, and subsequently each time a new nexus or society was created, another girl died. So it's like, shady. Girls dying for these societies. And now another girl died, but we don't have a new society. That's weird. Alex goes to the dean, who was once a member of the ninth house, and she, at the end of the book, is like, I know what you've been doing. You know about these, you figured out the same thing that Darlington has figured out, which is girl dies, new society. And he's like, well, you got me. I got paid a lot of money to create a new nexus, create a new society, but it didn't work. She just died. That's unfortunate. What do you want me to do? And while we have that showdown going on, which, is a nice opposition of man in power versus, woman that doesn't really know what she's gotten herself into, we have another character coming in. This character, and I wrote it down. What was her name? Professor Bellbaum. She takes interest in Alex at roughly the beginning of the book. She's like, well, you're in my class. You're kind of struggling. You can get an internship at my research group, being like an assistant, sort of, to better your grade. And throughout the book, she sometimes pops up, but it's like, not that important, It feels more like this. She's kind of a mentor, but not really. Professor Bellbaum comes in to this conclusion thing in the end, and then we have the most ridiculous conclusion to the story ever. Professor Bellbaum is not Professor Bellbaum. Professor Bellbaum is Daisy, the ghost, inside another woman's body. Because back then, when Daisy died for the first time, there was one of these I can't say that word, prognostication things going on. And Daisy was also a wheel walker, like Alex, supposed to monitor the Greys. One of the Greys attacked Daisy back then. And to save herself, what did she do? She put the ghost into her husband's body. The ghost husband who's trying to figure out why his poor wife died because he can't remember it. He then, controlled by the ghost, shoots his wife and then shoots himself. The ghost does that to the body of the guy. But Daisy doesn't want to die, so Daisy, the ghost herself, the wheel walker, puts herself into the body of her own maid and has been sustaining herself over centuries, because it happened in the 18th century, over centuries by consuming human souls. And if it's a wheel walker soul, similar to Alex's, she sustains that even longer. She has more time in between. And yes, every time a nexus is created, a girl dies, but specifically every time a nexus is created, it was because Bellbaum consumed that girl. So of course it wasn't going to work by just killing a girl, like the dean wanted it to try. It only works, so she's the mastermind behind all of this. And then there's like a short boss battle going on between Alex and this professor, and in the end Alex wins. The big secret of what happened to Darlington was that he didn't just walk into a portal, he walked into like a hell-beast situation. And at the very end of the book, they're like, well, we can still try to save Darlington. Let's go. So that's the end of the Ninth House, which sets up the sequel, Hellbent. That's why it's called Hellbent, because they're hellbent to get Darlington back, but they also have to go to hell to get him back. And there's just a lot going on in the book that I felt there's several aspects I would like to change for it to be more engaging or not such a drag. Yeah. Take out most of the scenes of Alex doing the investigating, because a lot of it is going back and forth and back and forth, going to the library, going back to the house, the ninth house. Like there's a lot of... It's in the end, it's highly convoluted. There's like this, our murder girl, she grew some drugs in the warehouse, and our murder girl actually grew these drugs with somebody else. We're being attacked by the somebody else guy, but there was also a guy who was in love with her. Then there's a side plot where Alex's roommate gets sexually abused by one of the society's guy, so she's also going after that guy, and that guy is also kind of connected to the murder girl. And it tries to be like a sort of thriller, crime, whatever book, but it doesn't land on it, and I feel like that's just not something Leigh Bardugo is very good at. So why not scratch that? Either that, or scratch the Daisy ghost husband plot. One of these plots I feel like has to go. Either the society's plot or the Daisy ghost husband plot. If you want to keep the fantastical aspect, the society's plot. Or the, investigation there. If you want to focus on men in power, people in power, and people with a lot of money do bad things plot, an aspect of the book, then strike away the fucking ghost husband story and stay with the actual investigating that is going on, and maybe use Alex's powers there instead of using the ghost husband plot to show off that Alex can be possessed by ghosts, can talk to ghosts. There's a lot of other aspects of magic that, can be explored in that. And to be honest, I would just, if we scrap the Daisy plot, scrap Professor Bellbaum. I felt like emotionally, it would have hit harder if the whole solution of the book was a girl had to die because a guy thought he was doing things according to a manual. And it didn't work out. But, he still got the funding. So, it's okay. I mean, it was just a girl, just somebody on campus that died. Felt like that would have been tying a lot better into the trauma that Alex went through of also just being a girl in the world of men that used and abused her, than having this reverse Deus Ex Machina professor coming in and being like, guess what? There's this huge plot.
Sorry, but also just why did she stay at Yale and not go other places to eat people's souls? She doesn't have to be there.
She actually does have to be there.
Oh.
She decays as soon as she goes too far away from the Nexuses. She tried. That's a good point.
Okay, but the first Nexus was established when she ate someone's soul, so how did she know this would happen?
The first Nexus happened when she died and then consumed somebody's soul, her maid's soul, as well. So she does die, but she kind of consumes her maid's soul. So they thought Daisy was the bad thing that happened, and she couldn't move away from that Nexus then. The first one that was created.
I also feel like it's why are you trying to tell a story about Yale and how old money is deeply corrupt and kills people to sustain stuff, and how fucked up all these secret societies are, and how when these secret societies only exist because they were lucky that some random ghost is killing people and creating the Nexus, wouldn't it make more sense that they figure out how to do that and then do it on purpose? Even if you want to keep the ghost, wouldn't it make sense that she accidentally created the first, and then people were like, wait, where did this come from? And then, try to figure out how to create one, and they have, a bunch of corpses lying around because it didn't work a lot of times, and then eventually they figure out how to do it, and then they keep doing it. It feels strange that it's one person's work who wasn't even doing it for the kind of profit that people are reaping from their own Nexi, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This feels very strange.
It felt like such a letdown of a conclusion to this whole book, to have one boogeyman. Because the whole book, it's about the exact opposite. It's not just one person you can cross out and then you're good, you're fine. But it's a whole bunch of people that make this whole system persist, and that it breeds its own kind. And you would have to topple the whole system, which you cannot, because you would literally have to nuke everyone involved on that campus.
It's also a little weird that the director is the one that killed the girl, and it wasn't a new society trying to establish itself with permission from the director or something. That's oh yeah, I did it. What is this? You're the director.
I don't remember when I blitzed through some chapters and I read a chapter by chapter summary again. I read the chapters where I was like, this summary doesn't give me what I need to understand what happens here. So he was an ex-member from the Ninth House, and it's a funding year for the Ninth House, which is also why he's constantly telling Alex to not look into the murder, because obviously it's rattling the other societies, and the other societies are the main alumni with money. and they need to kind of agree on funding the ninth house, and the dynamic is basically, oh, we societies give money to the house because obviously we have nothing to hide, but if somebody starts to stick their finger in,
doesn't make sense. Like, I'm like, wouldn't a much more logical development be that the ninth house only exists because all those secret societies don't trust each other, and therefore all have a stake in the ninth house existing and all have their own people with interests towards their house in there and, like, keep each other in check?
That too.
Like, why would they donate to... Like, sorry, but, like, no, you don't have to donate to a person who keeps you in check, like, just to look good. You're a secret society. You don't have to look good. Like, you don't have to bother. No,
that's
like,
true.
right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's the point. You don't have to bother. So why would you establish this unless you have a stake and some control in there to make sure everyone else isn't benefiting more than you because you're a paranoid little bitch, because you're rich, but also you don't trust other rich people because you would throw anyone under the bus for profit, so everyone else is also like this.
Throwing people under a bus.
It's like, right? Like,
but that's like the main reason why she's been told to not dig further. They don't want a big scandal. They don't want the ninth house to be like, what's the word? They don't want the ninth house to be negatively involved in something, even though they're trying to solve a crime. They don't want any publicity that could end up with the houses not funding them anymore. And that's also something that was so dumb. He's not just trying to get money for the funding, kind of. He's mostly trying to get money because he recently got divorced. And it's like...
sorry, that's so funny.
I expected more out of this very serious, very trauma-laden story than that. So just scrap all the goofy parts.
But like, I feel like that could also work if you play the horror of it right, because it's like he cares so little for the life of a student that it seems absolute, like, right? For a trivial reason, such as divorce and alimony, he's like, sure, I'll kill a kid. I don't give a shit, right? That's an angle you can play, but you have to play it the correct way. Otherwise, it just seems silly.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. I meant with cutting the goofy parts is, I feel like to some extent, he is written that way in the conclusion because we have the other main villain then coming in and making it kind of bigger. So just scratch that, lean into the fucked upness of the societies, and especially the Darlington disappearance is, you don't really get why he would disappear, and Alex at some point is like, oh yeah, he disappeared, blah blah, and then we get a POV finally of his disappearance, and from her perspective, he literally walks into a portal, never to be seen again. In the end, he was actually like kept in the portal by a hell beast. At least that's what the dean says. And it's like, make this more dramatic. Obviously, Alex is shaken by the fact she now has to do all of this alone, but it feels very subdued. Like, it feels either Leigh Bardugo just couldn't handle writing a character who is depressed and struggles with, any kind of like emotions in general, like kind of numb to the world, or she just didn't think of it and was too occupied with exposition and a lot of descriptions of the campus. I've got to be honest, there's a lot of buildings being described in this book.
She was just horny about how cool the Yale campus was.
Yeah, horny about the whole situation, the whole dark academia aesthetic, honestly, that then resulted in Alex being such a bland character, and that really doesn't help. The scenes that are the most engaging are the ones with Darlington. And I felt like if you would play more into that in a rewrite and give an actual emotional, like, reaction from Darlington just disappearing, with her thinking, is he just like all the other like rich people? Did he just nope out of here? Is he just leaving me to like kind of, I don't know, go across the Italian countryside in his expensive building and just noped out of here? But what's going on? It doesn't really. The conclusions are too close to each other.
Yeah.
And I would just. And one thing that. One last thing, and then I'll. That made. Like, left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth is that. Alex is the only person of color in this whole book. Or, like. Yeah, I think she's in the whole book. She's half, so there's also that aspect there. Of being a POC, and it feels kind of weird to have her go through all of this trauma, and it feels more like it feels less like, oh, Leigh Bardugo actually said, like, for example, with Inej, it's like this person has cultural background, there's more than just a skin color attached to her, and it didn't feel like that with Alex. It was like, oh shit, I have to kind of give this a little bit of a more diverse thing.
Oh yeah, you know what black girls do? Take drugs and then, get pimped out, and
Exactly. That left a bad taste in my mouth when I read that book, and I don't know. The half POC girl running around campus, being abused by white people around her. It's like, I don't feel it doesn't get addressed properly in the way where you're like, oh yeah, shit, it feels like a
I feel like it would benefit just from like, no, this is absolutely something that would happen, but what also would happen is that all these societies would have like, people with scholarships who are also more likely to be people of color and stuff, doing like grunt work and shitty work and also being treated, and that she can like connect with them and get information from them that she wouldn't get from the higher ups, and like, because like Yale is not exclusively white people.
It didn't feel like a RF Kuang Babel situation.
There are also,
it felt like a very not thought through situation. Yeah,
I mean, there's also wealthy people of color who go to Yale who would also participate in fucking over anyone poorer than them. It's like, I don't think you need to be the only person of color in a story, to show that you're the underdog in a place that would be diverse. But what I don't know, like, I've heard people, I think I've read a review where someone said this, and like, with what you've said, I would agree that this feels like Leigh Bardugo was desperate to be perceived as an adult author who can write about adult serious topics. And this is why Alex's backstory is like that.
Yeah.
And like,
I think
obviously, so if these things happen to people in real life, it's terrible and a tragedy. But if it happens in a book, at some point you're also like, isn't this overkill? Like, right? Like, especially with like, oh yeah, Ghost raped her when she had her first period, and it's like, why though? Like, right? Like, do they go so insane? Like, if they're attracted to blood, okay, make them want to, I don't know, eat the blood. Why would this necessarily then escalate to sexual violence? Like, it would also be traumatizing if they just tried to eat her or whatever. Like, I don't understand why that needs to be, but also the rest is like, okay, but are you actually dealing with the topics, or are you just putting them in there because they're like horrific and people will be like, wow, this is dark? It's like, okay, yeah, in real life it is, but if you're just, just including them in your story doesn't make your story deep. It just makes it violent, which is not the same.
Yeah, it felt at points. I wouldn't call it trauma porn because there's no. You're not supposed to feel anything else than
she's not moaning in the way some thriller victims are, where it's like, oh,
you're not supposed to like. It's very much supposed to be a horrific situation while you're reading this as the reader. But there's a sort of graphicness about it. She doesn't just get raped by the ghost. She gets found by her teacher and her, at that time, best friend, crying, pants down, blood everywhere, on her legs, in that bathroom. Like, babbling incoherently, and then has to sit on a bus with all the children of school, like, because they were on a trip, going back and being like, comforted by the teacher, but at that point she could never look that girl in the eye. Like, it's not just the fact of it, it's the whole, it feels like when a Disney star is known for being this happy-go-lucky person, and then they try to break out of the Disney persona and do very, very fucked up shit. That's what you described. Feels like Leigh Bardugo said, "Oh, we have to get nitty and gritty in this book, in order to, position myself as not just a YA author." And I've heard good things about her new book, The Familiar. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh no, this is actually fun and interesting." But with Ninth House, she did lose me, and I did want to read Hellbent originally, and I think now it's gonna be like a situation when I see it float by, I'm gonna be like, you know what, maybe
wait until like the next one is out and how people react to that before you bother.
Yeah, exactly.
It might, like, the series might improve with time. Some do.
I've heard people say that Hellbent is better than Ninth House.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that we're dealing with Darlington again, because at the end, they say, let's find Darlington, let's go get him. But yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna watch a review video or something of Hellbent, and then I'll see if I still want to read it. Because this is not a series where I'm bothered by spoilers. I think spoilers will be good for me in order to actually go and read the book if I do like the spoilers.
Sometimes it's like, if this happens, then I'm interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I do get that. Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I had Ninth House as a burn previously, because I had such a, like, I felt like a personal insult. I felt this book from on paper felt tailor-made to what at this time I was interested in reading, and then I was disappointed so fucking much that I was like, okay, you know what? No. I'm gonna give you a low rating. But yeah, I feel like at some point there should be a trigger warning in here, because again, it is such a graphic scene. It's not just a rape scene, and it's not just scenes of violence for me. I don't know if any of you guys have watched The Magicians, which is a TV show that's based on a book series as well. And they aged up the characters in the TV show very drastically. In the books, they're like teenagers, late teenagers, and in the series, they're like, I don't know, in their 20s, early 30s, whatever. And there's also, I mean, it's a pretty graphic series. But you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch it. And then in the middle of the first season, there's the whole aspect of The Magicians is very dark. The whole thing about the villain, it's very dark. But in the middle of the series, there's a very graphic rape scene, like, with lots of symbolism and noise, and that was similarly garish for me, the Ninth House scenes, because it's like, why all of a sudden like this? Make me feel more dread about what happens to Alex before showing me that scene, so I'm like sort of prepared, but I'm still fucking disgusted about what happened to her when I find it out. Just a little bit of something.
It's again, like, I feel like if you're going to include something like that, you have to make a real effort to integrate it into your character and, like, make it deeply meaningful for the story. Like, as in, like, this is such a relevant experience for your character that basically every scene is influenced by what happened there. And, I don't know, like, Six of Crows gets away with, like, very traumatic stuff happening to kids because it's YA, and these are not that serious, and these characters also don't quite always behave in a way that's, like, realistic and necessarily, but it's also, it's more vague, and it's also, importantly, a fantasy setting in a different time period.
Yeah.
So there is a much larger suspension of disbelief, and it's already more removed from the audience in that sense, and then nothing is graphically described, so like you aren't as bothered as a reader that this isn't quite as impactful on the character as you might assume it ought to be. And it's like, yeah, it comes up in scenes, and like but it's also like it's not that present in the standard internal narration or reactions of the characters, which is fine. Again, it's like it's not about that, right?
Yeah.
But this book is about that. Like, it is about how the powerful abuse their power and like benefit, right?
Yeah.
Like that's that's kind
in
of
every,
if you're dealing
like,
with
layer.
secret societies, and like in every way, it's like okay, but then like you need to do more with it. Like I also feel like I don't know. It's like you write about trauma, but then you're afraid that a genuinely traumatized character would be too unsympathetic to an audience, so you just to make the character bland,
Yeah, because she's like, she is scared of the Greys and like very wary of them, but I don't know, it feels and she does panic one time while Darlington is still there. She gets grabbed by one and he's like, that shouldn't happen, and she's also like freaking out about the fact that she gets grabbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like there was definitely fear on Alex's side, and you can like fear of everything, right? The Greys, the society, these rich people, these rich white people, everybody, men. But I don't know. I like to be prepared for.
Yeah, no, I think
like
if something
this.
like that and it's in there, I'm like, listen, it's like, it's fine if you want to open your book with a, hey, none of this is really happening at Yale, don't worry about it. But like, if that's important enough to put in your book, then I think you should also put a page in that tells the reader, this contains depictions and discussions of the following.
I'm looking
Be
up,
aware.
right, yeah.
Like, I don't think, like, I feel like for that, especially if, like, I understand that, like, American media is very desensitized to, like, graphic violence, but even for that, in parts, it's like, okay, this is not the genre I would necessarily expect it from, and I would also say that, like, unfortunately, even if you don't want to be perceived as that, you are known as a YA author, and it is ridiculous to assume that not a huge chunk of your previous audience will follow you to whatever you write next. Mm-hmm. So, like, there's nothing wrong with writing something with a radically different tone, but it would be useful to make it clear in the marketing, but also on the book itself, that this is radically different in tone from, your YA stuff.
I'm trying to find whether maybe it's just not in the book, but like on like Amazon or something, and I don't see any what is it? No, this one. It doesn't say any. There's no trigger warnings like or like content warnings.
Oversight. Yeah, I feel like,
especially because Ninth House is not that old of a book. It was published in 2020, and like I think the trigger warning thing, especially at least in dark romance, has started way before that, and it like I only know the German one. It's schwapping over. It's growing over to the rest of the genres. Yeah. That has happened also far before 2020. I don't know if she was like kind of cautious to put trigger warnings on there because it's like, oh my god, it's her first adult debut, and she like it's already tagged with sexual violence, but
like that's in there though. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like if you're committed to putting it in there, you can also warn people. Like, it's not a spoiler. Like, it's just I mean, what genre is it shelved under? Because I understand that like thriller and horror are like, you can expect that those have at least some graphic violence and stuff. Yeah. But like, again, it's like I don't expect, like, I also like, it is a bit of a double standard, but, like, I don't expect an established, like, horror writer who only writes, like, horror and thriller and, like, graphic violence to put that in, because I think it can be expected. But again, as of somebody who writes relatively tame YA, I think it makes sense because the pre-existing audience will go there.
Yeah.
Like, let's be very real here.
It's
not entirely fair, but, like, you know, I think it would be helpful and the more necessary. Like, would it be great if every book had trigger warnings? Yeah. But there are also just, like, genres where it's like, yeah, you can expect something like that to be in there.
Yeah.
Like, right?
From a fantasy book, you can expect death. That happens usually in fact. It's so Goodreads doesn't really show the official genres set by the publisher, but it kind of looks at all different shelves that has been put on. And usually the genres are fantasy, mystery, fiction, horror, paranormal, adult, and urban fantasy, which I think fantasy doesn't check out as much as mystery.
I mean, it is urban fantasy, so people shelve
it.
But I'm like, listen, if the majority of people doesn't shelve it under horror and doesn't expect that of it, I think that's appropriate. Like, your standard urban fantasy does not have graphic violence or rape in it. Like, usually it is mentioned because these things happen, because urban fantasy, like, has violence, obviously, but they're not
graphic,
self-indulgently, like, detailed or described, usually. And, I understand, like, again, you don't have to put trigger warnings in there, but I don't think you have anything to lose, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not writing for the kind of audience who gets triggered by trigger warnings, right? If you know you're writing for a diverse young audience, I don't think you're losing sales by putting a trigger warning into a book that has obviously triggering content.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I feel especially if you venture off into the horror genre, then trigger warnings are important for everyone to have a good time, as in an enjoyable time while consuming your media. Because horror is about making people feel uncomfortable. And some things cross the line of the right amount of uncomfortable for you as a reader. So you're only doing a service for the people actually, as you said, interested in your book by labeling it appropriately with triggers. So,
again, like, there are genre expectations. I don't think you have to be like, hey, there's extreme violence in this for, like, horror or whatever, because, like, especially depending on the description, you can kind of imagine that, like, a lot of, like, you know, hauntings, whatever, splatter stuff. Of course, that's gonna have gratuitous violence. It's part of the course.
It comes with the package.
Yeah, but if you are writing something where that sounds like a mystery story, I think it can only be helpful. Is it a sin not to do it? No. I think you're also in your it's perfectly reasonable not to. But I do think, especially, like, from the publisher's side, this is very bad, just as a marketing decision, because you know Leigh Bardugo fans will read this, and you know a lot of them are young, and you're gonna get complaints about this. Like, right? I feel like it's also safer for you, from a monetary perspective, to avoid the bad press of, like, hey, this has some really graphic, disturbing shit in it, which you need to know before you read it, and because it wasn't warned for, I had a really bad time. Like, you don't want people to say that about your book.
So I think for people who are, like, to wrap this up, because I'm also interested in your right. To wrap this up, I think if you like the aesthetic of this dark academia thing, and you are an avid horror and mystery and crime reader because you're interested in that, you're comfortable with the genre, then go for it. I think Ninth House for that kind of reader can be very engaging and interesting, and you would rather, I guess, mostly get annoyed by the little twist in the end, because it's a very Scooby-Doo kind of, you know, kind of...
I was the villain all along.
kind of twist there. But apart from that, I think Ninth House definitely has its right to exist in that instance. It just, for me, it really wasn't, because I guess I had different expectations, and I felt like we were trying to do too much in too little time, while proving that we're not just an YA author.
I just love the idea of like the Scooby-Doo like mask off meme where it's like, behind every abusive white supremacist society is an evil ghost killing people to prolong its life?
I mean, she literally goes, I'm not a professor, I'm a dead ghost.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Just imagine the ghost husband being like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
Daisy. But yeah, let's move on.
Yeah,
and get into the last book of the episode, the Near Witch one, right?
So, let's get to the Near Witch, which was also not very good. Like, I remember when you gave me the 3 books, I was like, okay, I don't like this first one. Okay, I also don't like the second one. Oh, the third one I also don't like. They're all bad, but in different ways, so that's fun. Okay, so, The Near Witch is only an old story told to frighten children. If the wind calls at night, you must not listen. The wind is lonely and always looking for company. There are no strangers in the town of Near. These are the truths that Lexi has heard all her life. But when an actual stranger, a boy who seems to fade like smoke, appears outside her home on the moor at night, she knows that at least one of these sayings is no longer true. The next night, the children of Near start disappearing from their beds, and the mysterious boy falls under suspicion. As the hunt for the children intensifies, so does Lexi's need to know about the witch that just might be more than a bedtime story, and about the history of this nameless boy. So, it's a mystery, horror kind of, story. Mm-hmm. The horror is very light. It's a YA. I think it was V. Schwab's very first published book.
Oh.
Which if I had known then, I wouldn't have bought it. Because, most breakout books are not good, and they are not as good as later stuff.
Yeah, obviously.
Which holds up for this one especially. It's not very good, really. Like, the summary tells you most of it, like, isolated little town on the moor. Kids start disappearing. Girl meets mysterious boy. They investigate the disappearing children. The rest of the village starts blaming the boy, trying to, pin that on him, and then it's like, oh, maybe it is actually the mysterious witch from the stories, and, we've got to stop her and get the children back, whatever. That's most of what happens in the story, because the real problem of this book is that it's insanely repetitive.
Because each kid disappears the same way?
Not just that. The kids disappear the next morning, you're like, oh wow, a kid is gone.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. But also because it's like, hey, night happens, kid disappears. Lexi goes out to find, information, and next night, then sneaks back home. Her uncle tells her, hey, stop doing that, it's dangerous, and you are a girl. So it's extra dangerous for you, and you should do what I, a man, tell you to. Uh-huh. And then it's night, and then another kid disappears. They go out looking for clues. Lexi slowly befriends the boy, whom she names Cole, which is very funny, because later we find out his entire family died in a fire that he kind of caused on accident.
Oh, like Cole with C-O-A-L?
No, she does, the name is spelled C-O-L-E, but, it's still phonetically, it's very funny. It's similar, when she, starts guessing name, and she's like, oh, I think I'm gonna call you Cole, and he turns and looks at her, she's like, oh, you don't like it? And he's like, no, I don't. And she's like, well, I'm gonna keep calling you that until you tell me your real name, and he's like, I don't have a name.
So wait, one question. This boy that she was like, fades like dust or something?
Yeah,
so
fades like smoke. He is real. Smoke. He's a real boy. He just has magic powers. He's like a witch, you know. So he has like powers so he can disappear and cloak himself. But he is a real boy that's really there, really exists.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's not the one kidnapping. I guess, spoiler warning, but also, don't bother. The book's been out for years. When did this come out? Probably like... Wait, 2011? Wow, that's later than I thought, but
that's the same as Shatter Me. Did I give you just 2011 releases?
Dude, I think Kiss of Deception came out later. I think that it was hyped on BookTube when I was watching BookTube, which would have been after 2016. So I don't know when this one came out. Let's look at that. Where's your year? Hello, 2014. Well, so close. So close, but yet so far. The boy is innocent. He didn't kidnap the children. It's the near witch who is stealing the children in revenge for centuries or like generations ago. People from the village killed her because they thought she'd killed a child, but she hadn't. And then they, buried her body on the moor somewhere, and she's like, slowly been like manifesting again as like an entity with power, and like now she's she's not killing the kids, she's collecting them. They're all fine at the end of the story. It's a YA book. Can't go around killing kids.
I was about to say, now she actually is like, she's like, you accuse me of killing children?
God, I wish she did. Like, every time a horror story or like any story is like, ooh, no, the kids are disappearing, what's happening to them? I'm like, just kill him. It's more impactful if you actually commit to killing the kids. Like, is that yeah, but like, first off, none of these are real kids, like, chill. Yeah, but also, like, it's... Every time a story pulls its punches in that regard, it's like, oh, okay, you're not actually committing to, like, the natural conclusion that your story should be because you're too scared that people will be upset that you're killing fictional kids.
It's also an interesting way to break the narrative, sort of, because especially in a YA book, as you said, you expect them not to die. And there's always this amount of hope, like, oh no, they're probably still alive. Yeah. And then you find out, oh no.
Yeah.
They actually did die.
Yeah, and that's like, there's also less urgency, because like, at the end, obviously, the last kid that's disappearing is the main character's younger sister. And, that's scary, but it would be a lot scarier if the other kids were dead and not just missing.
Yeah.
Because if you knew they were dead, it would be actual concern that this kid might die and not just like, oh no, she might die. It's more serious if you know these kids are actually dead and not coming back.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of the stories, like, investigating that, we get a little background. Lexi's the daughter of a hunter who died. I tried to look up how he died. It wasn't in the first few pages, so I leafed some more, but I didn't find it. I don't remember how he died. I was like, was the story relevant? I was trying to figure out if this would affect my rewrite, like if it had thematical weight, but I couldn't. Yeah. I couldn't find it, so I was like, I guess, people die sometimes. That sucks. I don't think it was like a twist or whatever. I think it was just like, again, I feel like I'd remember it if it felt relevant to the story. But yeah, the city has like a triumvirate of like ruling families which form the council, who are like, responsible for like, searching for the kids and then like trying to blame Cole for it. They end up like going so far as to making people like plant evidence that he was where children disappeared just so they could have a culprit, like, real proper witch hunt shit. Also in this town, but slightly outside of it, there's also 2 witch sisters who live in a cottage. They're not super powerful, but they have some magic. They are real, actual witches as well. And Lexi, like, knows them because her father liked and respected them and visited them a lot. And she likes to visit them, and she's like, oh, I wish I could do, like, magic. It's, like, cool, but I don't have powers. So it's like, sad for her, whatever. Like, but she has a relationship to them, and obviously when the village starts turning against them because they also blame them because they're sheltering Cole, they're like very anti-witch, and then they're
So do
I
people
think,
know that they are witches? Is it
yeah,
like an
they
open
do.
secret?
Like, they
or...
can actually perform magic stuff. Like, they can. Like, it is. Everyone's aware they're witches.
Yeah. Okay.
And, yeah, there's not that much else. Like, again, at first, it's like, oh, the New Witch is just a story. And, like, the bedtime story children are taught is that, like, oh, she lived in the city and she liked children and she played with them, showed them her magic, and one day she just like went out onto the moor and never came back, and you can still hear her singing on the wind, that's there. And like the real story is of course that people like beat her to death and then like buried her bones out on the moor, which I guess you could call she went onto the moor and never came back. I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
Kind of.
It's a very poetic way of
it's very, it's like, I mean, I'm not exactly lying when you're like, yeah, one day her body just moved out onto the moor and like never came back. Why it was doing that? Well, let's not get into that, but
Is it precise when this story like sort of plays? Like, is it?
No, that's like another thing that's like bad
or...
about it. It's very vague about the time where it's playing. It's like it feels kind of, it could be anywhere from rural town in the 1800s, which just hasn't modernized, and doesn't get anywhere, or it could also just be in the 1400s or it's so unclear. It's so vague. Yeah. And like many YA books, it suffers from period atypical misogyny. Like the main character is like, oh, I have to wear dresses, but I wish I could wear pants. Like my uncle hates that I'm chopping wood or that I'm going out tracking and hunting because my father taught me how to and I'm good at it. And it's like, that in no rural society people would be opposed to women doing that, right? Like they'd be like, oh, that's good. And also like women were chopping wood in the days when wood chopping was necessary. I promise you, they did do and they wouldn't be upset about you wearing pants if it's more practical. Although like it wouldn't necessarily be that much more practical, quite frankly. Like work dresses, people have worked in dresses for centuries. Like pants were really invented and popularized because they're convenient for riding, and societies that do a lot of horse riding have a lot of pants, and then they just became integrated into Western fashion, and from there exported everywhere via colonialism. But
even then, there's like so much fashion surrounding like riding outfits or sports outfits.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you said with the atypical behavior, I think atypical in the sense of what we usually connect to certain eras or eras happening is usually connected to the higher class people. That's what we kind of attribute this certain behavior in history to. But
it's also just because a lot of like historical narratives that have become popularized were heavily created and biased as a result.
That too,
in Victorian England, which was extremely sexist for its time, and being like, there were very extreme gender roles which were then retroactively applied to the past by scholars who weren't doing real scholarship as you would understand it today, but they were just kind of imagining what the past must have been like from their life. And it's like, no, we know realistically this is not how it happened, because it also wouldn't make sense. Like, especially women were doing hard back-breaking labor on farms as well. People had to do the work. Like, it's not like you can't afford to have women do no hard labor. It just doesn't work that way. All the labor that was like too difficult to do was done by the children who didn't have rights and didn't go to school, because like mandatory and generally available schooling is very recent. Kids were just working from when they were kids, so all the like womanly easy tasks that you might need, like, dexterity for, but not strength, would be done by kids. Because they also had to do work. And, like, the adults did the hard work. it's one of my pet peeves where I'm always like, this is too stupid. Like these people these people would all die. The society would collapse. Yeah, like
yeah. I mean, it's for if your character is royalty or if your character is upper class, it makes totally sense. But if your character is working class, lower class, it makes no sense.
If your character lives in a tiny town where everyone's doing manual labor because otherwise you don't survive, this is stupid.
Yeah.
So so that's the thing.
That little excursion.
I understand, like, again, it's in there to be relatable to teenagers who are also like, oh yeah, I live in the US and like here the attitude is that like, you know, women should stay at home and do housework, and it's like, okay, sure, but that's not the case for whatever. Like, right, it's like I don't think teenage girls are too stupid to find a character relatable who doesn't live or feel exactly like them. Yeah. I think they are very capable of relating to a character who has different kinds of problems or similar problems for different reasons. Like, again, as I said, one thing I would change is that, like, just strike out the stupid sexism. Lexi's uncle is, like, overly protective and paternalistic towards her, which can make just the same amount of sense in a world where that, like, it's not because of sexism, because her father died. Like, his brother died doing this kind of hunting work, and it's like, and she's young, and she reminds everyone very much of her father in the way she acts and stands and, like, everything, that he would be, like, paranoid about her dying because he's traumatized by his brothers. It's not weird. Like, this can totally happen. It's not a... Like, you can still play it that way. It doesn't...
just
the character doesn't need to be sexist for this angle to work. For this child to be, like, told that she's not supposed to go out, she's not supposed to, like, be alone on the moor looking for the kids, she should stay away from certain... That all makes sense for, like, someone overprotective without sexism. Like,
what about her mother? So her father died. Is the mother like, oh, sexism, she's not allowed to talk, or...
No, it's not that extreme. Her mother's, like, around, but she's depressed since her father died.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, very strong Hunger Games energy here. With the older sister who goes hunting, the younger sister... I mean, the younger sister's named Ren. She's, like, cute and, like, full of life, and, you know, like, kids are... I feel like she's probably also Prim's age. The mom's depressed after the dad died. Like, there's, like... I mean it's not a rare idea, but it's also, like, I've just noticed that this is very strangely similar.
You would
in
have
vibes.
2 euros, which is not a lot.
It's not a lot, but it's strange that it happened twice. No, her mom's depressed. Her mom's like a baker. She bakes bread for the village and like passes it out, and like Lexi is tasked with like bringing it to people for breakfast or whatever. Where I'm also like, where are the ingredients coming from? And also, isn't that way too little bread? Like, don't other people also have to make bread than just this one woman for a whole village? Like,
honestly, how many people are in that village? Like,
it's never really specified. It's like, I would assume it's at least like 100. You would, and then you would be like, yeah, if bread's the main food source, then it's like 100 loaves a day? Because like, right, for a whole day, it was typical. Like, if you look at old rations from, like, CASA inventories and stuff, they're like, yeah, 1 loaf a day for an adult. Because, like, yeah, if you just eat that and a little bit of cheese or a little bit of meat, and that's what you get, then, yeah, you need a loaf a day. The loaves
were also smaller. Because, I mean, modern grain and baking techniques, like, of course you get a bigger
Of course,
loaf.
Even today, like, a loaf can mean very different things.
That's
like,
true, yeah.
You can have, like, small loaves, and you can have, like, 3-kilogram loaves. Like, it's, like, you know.
I once had a loaf that was a small child. It was my frog loaf. I don't know if you remember it, but it was like...
I do remember him.
It was a big frog. Okay,
yeah.
never mind.
Yeah, so... Her mother's baking, but she's depressed, so she doesn't really intervene when people tell Lexi she has to stay home, and that they're, like... You know, she's not really defending her much. She's not. And Lexi feels kind of betrayed by that, which is, like, fair. I would also be like, hey, Mom, what the fuck? I mean, like, again, I also understand that, like, yeah, if you lose someone you love, and you're super depressed, like, yeah, you're also not in a position to help people, but it's still like, I get why your child would be mad about this. But yeah, so again, the story ends basically with, like, they find out where the witch's bones are buried. They, like, take them back to where her former house was that was burned down, and, like, put them to rest there, and that, like, kills the reanimated witch. And the children come. They find the children near the bones, I think, somewhere.
So, so they like bury her again, or how do they lay her to rest? Is it a ritual?
I'm laughing because it's no. I'm laughing because in the book it's a very funny way to put someone to rest. I just the
put a blanket over it.
Is so funny. So the idea is that they build a tomb where her old house used to be to put her to rest in there. And the original idea is that they just take the bones and put them in there. But the witch, like, reanimates every night, so, like, since she's, like, connected to the moor, like, the ground shifts and connects her body with, like, new sinews and, like, body parts made from, like, parts of nature, and she's walking around and, like, stuff. Which is cool. I like that. That's, like, a fun thing to play with, you know?
Yeah.
But they end up, like, she ends up reanimating before they can put her bones in there. And then there's this really funny fight scene where she runs after Lexi, who had the bones first, but then the bones started moving and, like, putting themselves together in a, like, really fun scene. And then she's about to, like, strangle Lexi. They're so close to, like, the tomb and stuff. And then her uncle shoots her with a rifle. And then, while she's off balance, Cole uses his magic to control the wind, because he has mostly wind magic, to, you know,
swoop her off.
Kick her into the tomb where she then falls apart. And, like, calling that laying her to rest is very funny. Because, like,
oh my god, they push her to rest. They push this poor old woman.
They yeet her to rest. It's very
down
funny.
The stairs into her own mausoleum. Okay, but wait, he has a rifle. So that...
Yeah, rifles and guns exist. I don't... Again, the timeline is... I don't know where they even get ammunition or, like, you know, black powder, you know?
Imagine this happening somewhere in, like, Kentucky. In, like, the 80s. Does
Kentucky well known for its moors.
I have...
I assume it's supposed to be somewhere in, like, the British Highland, you know, where in the moors and stuff, like, the vibes are there.
Yeah.
But it would be very funny.
No,
just, like, being the Midwest.
One thing I also thought about was, like, when the Puritans came to the US, you know, they also had some witch hunts.
No, absolutely, but this is very not religious. Like, the council's not religious. Very, like, I think is there a church? I don't remember. There might be a church, but it's not specific. And again, their hatred for witches is very specific. And they tolerate the witches there, and magic's demonstrably real, but they're not, like, they only start, like, they don't like the witches really, but they tolerate them, and only when the kids start disappearing. Which, in fairness, is a real witch's doing. Do they get more violent about it? Which, like, still they're, you know, aiming at the wrong people, but it's not the kind of, like, Protestant extremist hatred of the idea of witchcraft. It's very, again, makes it very strange, because it's like, is this in a fantasy setting? I guess kind of, but also it's so removed from any useful historical context that you can't place it.
I honestly love the gaslighting this community has been doing to itself over the years, because you said that the main character, she's like, oh shit, this is not a story, it's not a fable, and it's like, well, obviously the people who've been living here for, like, centuries ago had been bothered by this witch. It's a very thing that happened.
Yeah, she was real. I mean, they go to one of the council people and be like, hey, you need to tell me where your ancestors like chucked her bones. We need to know because we need the bones. And like they still know. They still like they pass that knowledge on where it's like, why'd you write down where you like? Do you tell your son, hey, listen, the witch was real, and also this is where we put the bones back then. Like, why would you do that? This is so funny. Like conceptually hilarious choices made by really like the people who kept the witch.
I'm also thinking, isn't a moor kind of difficult to dig in?
Yeah. The bones aren't like really buried. I mean, moors also can be like very squishy and like wet. So like, also like, again, I don't think they were that worried about the body. I just think they didn't want it to immediately be found. I don't feel like they were worried about scavengers digging up the witch and like eating the you know?
Yeah.
You only bury people 6 feet under because you don't want animals getting to them.
Wouldn't that be metal for like they threw the witch into the bog, right?
Yeah.
And then the animals like kind of eat off her, which makes it then possible because nature took a part of her for then like these centuries later to be made of nature because it's
I mean, yeah, the implication is that like the witches like have a strong connection to nature and like the near witch especially to the moor. So like she already had like a connection to it, and that's what like allowed her to also come back. Because like I think at one point in the story it's like, yeah, she was buried, but like the moor shifts and hidden things come back to the surface with time. So like but yeah, this was very disappointing. It was so boring at times because it was so repetitive that I just started skimming it. Like legitimately, I did not like attentively read every
single word. I have a question regarding the boy, regarding Cole. Is there any connection to him appearing and the witch regaining power, or is it just a coincidence that he's just there?
The wind just brought him there. It's not explained. It's like it's a coincidence, which is very strange. Because like he lived in a different village, far enough away that it's not explained. Which part of my rewrite is like, okay, we need to fix some things here because this is Vegas shit, and I don't like that. I'm not a fan. So at first, I'm gonna be real with you. I think this lends itself to horror because it's already kind of that. Yeah. But I am practicing restraint. I want you to know, and I'm not killing a bunch of characters, even though I think it would thematically make sense. But it's a YA, so I understand that's not you're not supposed to do that. And like it's not like the vibe of the story isn't that dark, which is like okay, but I'll respect it. Whatever. I'll practice restraint. I'm not killing the kids, even though I want to. Kill them. Kill those fucking kids. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Yeah. So, first off, the town. So, it's just a small town, and I was so thrown by the fact that the book doesn't really make use of the kind of obvious, like, horror, like, you can milk out of this one sentence, like, there are no strangers in the town of Near. This is so creepy. Like, isn't that already fucking creepy? This already implies a lot of things about this town. So, I would say this is absolutely true, and it is a result of the witch actually, in her dying, like, cursing the town to be stuck in, like, its own, like,
bubble,
decapsulated bubble from reality, and running through its own cycles again and again and again. And, because also, like, kind of the story deals with like the cycles of violence because like they perpetrated violence against a witch. She came back and they were about to do that again unjustly against other witches, and they have to break out of this. Also, like, it is mentioned in the text specifically that the town of Near is circular. Like, already I'm like, this is like easy symbolism.
It's a witch
girl
circle.
This is free symbolism. You can immediately work with that. Yeah. And also, it would add to the interest that, like, the witch's cottage and the hunter's house are the only houses that are not on the circle of the town, because the two witches were alive when the near witch was alive. They're like ancient, and they've seen the town for all these like centuries, like moving on. They're still alive, so they're outside of this cycle that perpetrates itself. And like Lexi's father, the hunter, was also somebody who had a strong connection to the moor, which was why he was such a good tracker, and he listened to the moor wind, and he could follow it around because it liked him because he was listening. And Lexi like learned this from him and inherited it. So like that's obviously also something to work with. That these people, because they are outside of the standard cycle that like perpetuates itself, have more insight than the standard resident of the town of Nier.
Yeah. Because they have a different perspective, basically.
Yeah. So I think there's like a really interesting horror you could work with there, that like this town is like every year is the same, like to the date. Everything happens the same times again and again and again and again. Like the moon cycles stay the same, but nobody who lives there notices, right?
Yeah.
But it wouldn't just be like every year is the same, but it could also, there's also a fun line in there where Lexi, there's like this boy from a different family who she was friends with as a kid, but now he's become like kind of overbearing and sexist, and she's supposed to marry him, but she doesn't want to, and her uncle tries to pressure her. And about him, she says that like, I liked the boy that he was, but I didn't like the man he was becoming. He was becoming more like his father. And like, I think it would be fascinating if you could like expand the cycles into that, like the families remain the same over every generation. Like regardless of how a kid is born, they end up being the exact same and replacing their parents in the exact roles that they used to have, you know, and that that, you know, the way like the population and you know, how it's you know, how many women there are, how many men there are, and everything, that this stays the same. And also the relationships are like, if a family has like 3 children, one older brother who's 3 years older than the younger brother, and one younger sister who's 1 year younger, then the next generation has the same, in the same constellation. And it repeats over and over. And like, the town of Nier like doesn't notice. They just live like this, right? Yeah, and they don't see, but there's this uncanniness that pervades like everything because they're stuck in it and repeats over and over.
That's a cool idea.
Like, there's also the thing where like again, like the book is repetitive, so this might be where the idea came from, but also like Lexi talks about like how her days are all the same, like the way her mother wakes up always at the same time, makes bread the same way, and like it's always the same. Their morning rituals always remain the same. It's always like repeating. And I also think that could play a really interesting role in how the town reacts to Lexi, because she's not super popular. People think she's weird. Here they do it because like she's not behaving like a proper woman, but it would be a lot more interesting if we look at it in the way that like she's taking her father's space, but she's not a man, and she's also not exactly like him. So to these people who are used to everyone like emulating their parents to this like creepy extent, this is weird. It's off-putting that she doesn't fit into the mold that everyone else has, that they're like kind of outsiders who everyone like gets a weird vibe from because it just feels wrong to them. So like, you know, a much better reason for her to be an outcast than just like, oh, she doesn't like wearing dresses and like being pretty and like whatever. Yeah. So I think that would be a good backdrop. You'd have to write it in a way that the reader like notices and is like, wait, that's kind of weird. Like,
yeah, just subtle things.
Like, no, they just subtle uncanny things where you're like, wait, why are all these people like their parents? At first you're like, haha, it's funny that in that family it's like that, and then you're like, wait, they're all like this.
Yeah,
wait,
with the routine.
what?
With the routine, like there's always the one character. Maybe it doesn't always have to be the same. But like one character walking with a bucket along a certain pathway.
Yeah, it's always
and you're
the
like,
same.
Didn't I read about this yesterday? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and
that's
like,
a real cool thought.
That's happening again, and like, Yeah. So I think if you're going to do this, because it's like obviously like again cycle of violence and like breaking the cycle and also like breaking out like in a more like YA coming of age thing, like breaking out of the traditions of your family and being your own person and standing on. I think it also works with the idea, you know, and it's also like, hey, we're breaking the magic curse and now like the town is finally changing and like other people are starting to come in and things change and like, you know, that could be, I think, a more satisfactory ending than it is there where it's just like, oh yeah, Cold's staying there and people aren't mad at witches anymore because like, oh yeah, it was that one witch who was evil, but not the other ones were around. Which is like, I guess that's okay, but it's not, you know, it's not compelling to me.
Yeah.
Right. I have a lot of notes. I have to check what I already said.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's like interesting stuff about the near witch as well, but also I think it would make a lot of sense that not like in the story as it is that it's like Cole, but I think Lexi should be the one who puts the witch to rest personally. Like, feels like a no-brainer. She's the protagonist. She should make the relevant, you know, actions to the plot. And I also think that like she should either symbolically or literally then take the place that the witch used to have. So then she starts living like on that hill in that cottage where the witch used to live. And obviously she has that connection to nature. And I also think that like, I mean, I think she should also become a witch because quite frankly, she's already halfway there. Like she's already communing with like the more, like there are several times where she asks the wind for help and like it helps her by like blowing on the grasses in a way that reveals like magic footsteps and stuff. Yeah, where it's like, okay, you're practically already there. You just need, you know, that final spark. And I also think it's like a meaningful way that she is forever changed by basically killing the witch again. Like, you can call it putting to rest, but what you're doing is like, you know, killing, like, you know, making her unalive, as the people on TikTok would say. Like, and that should leave a mark on you. And that definitely would make sense that it changes her into something else. And there, like, throughout the story, it's also like, Lexi's good with kids. Like, she's good with her younger sister, and she's good with, the town kids. Like, she's, helping this one little boy who's, like, sad because his sister disappeared or whatever. And, like, she seems good with kids, but she also has the line where she's like, I'd rather wither and become an old crone like the witch sisters than ever marry someone, you know? And that's like, isn't that like such a good place to put her at the end? And also because I think I don't like Cole as he is in the story. It's just like, he's so random. The romance is kind of boring, but it's just like, he just appears randomly, like, into this place, and then he's there, and like she's the first girl who really talks to him after he's killed like his family, so they like, you know, fall in love, whatever. But I think actually because like in the story he's like, oh yeah, the way he talks about what happened to his family, he says, once long ago there was a man and a woman and a boy and a village full of people, and then the village burnt down, and then there was nothing. And I think a really good implication of this would be that, like, sure, the wind tried to protect him, but, like, he's not fully alive anymore either. Like, you can also, like, also works, like, symbolically, like, obviously when your family died, a piece of you also died, and, you know, he's not fully alive, which is why he could slip through, like, the cracks of the curse on Nier. Why he's the first stranger to come there. Because he's not... Like, he's more wind than boy. He's, like, more nature than, like, alive. So the curse doesn't, like, track on him. And I also think that would be, like, a cool ending where, like, okay, yeah, they do get together. And because they're both other... And, like, you know, it, like, forms a connection between them that's more meaningful than just... oh, I saw a pretty boy on the moor, and, like, he's a cool witch, and, like, I think he's innocent, and we're hanging out a lot, you know? Like, it's just, I think that's just a more meaningful way to connect, where it's like, yeah, she's other now, and most of, like, the adults in the village think that's off-putting.
But
Like,
he
and
doesn't.
most people don't know how to deal with her. But for him, she's still the same, because, like, he's not. And also, like, if he's already half dead, he's probably gonna live a long time. And as a witch, she could also then live a long time. If the idea is that, like, the witch is there, like, they're connected
like a
to
force
nature.
Of nature.
Yeah. And, like, I think it would make sense in, the rewrite to structure it like that, like, basically anyone could become a witch, because the more is, like, it's, like, alive in a, like, general sense. It's like a huge network of, like, living things, and the more you open up to it to communicate and, like,
The more you okay. I'm sorry.
Just make a t-shirt that's like more power, as like a joke. Give me more.
Just had to slide that one in, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, and like the more you open up, the more you can access the power, but also the less human you become, because you become part of like this tapestry of like power and like living things that intersect and like connect. So it's like, at the beginning, like her father and she are like on the part where they're mostly people, but they're like listening and like interacting enough to like perceive it, and like most of the village people are just like, it's just nature, who cares, like it has nothing to say, and they can't even perceive it. And like witches like are farther along where they become less human, which makes them more like long-lived and like powerful, because they can access more power and they won't die as long as the Moor is alive. But also they're obviously not people, and people are kind of put off by them because they can feel like it's the uncanny valley, right? You see it and you feel like it's not. It's like you. Yeah. It's like, this looks like a person, but it's not quite. And that vibe. And I would appreciate if, at the end, Lexi like connected to the Moor in service of like entombing the witch again in the ground and like putting her to rest, and as a result of that she's stuck like that. It's like, it's a choice she makes, but it's just what she is like now.
I feel like, especially if you do not go the Christianity witch route, but the nature biome kind of route, then what you have just described has a much more powerful impact and much more poetry about it, because it do be like that. You have witch stories that are about like Satanism and the whole
where there's tangible demons and like real obvious,
and then you have the more like Wicca kind of witch stories that are about energies of the earth and the power that certain just gigantic, what you said, like interconnected living things of nature have, and to then utilize that properly would I think that would be a great idea.
And also
makes
like
it more powerful.
It's like, I also think it works on the level of the Nia Witch, where she was like very powerful, much more powerful than the witch sisters we know, and then like they might have killed the part of her, or they thought they killed her, but they only killed the part of her that was still human, but she was still animated ultimately by the rest of the energy, and it still maintained part of like her soul or like her like personality, and like it was ultimately like full of anger and like hate when she died. And she was, because like I'd also be really mad if people killed me for something that I didn't even do. So then like that anger and hate like festers there where it's stuck underground, but it's still like connected to the rest. So the idea is that like the whole Moor is like more hostile towards the people of the town, and it's like they feel like it's unsafe, so they stay, in their town, in their circle, and they don't venture out, and they don't wonder why there's no strangers coming in, because obviously the Moor is dangerous and you can't go out there, because they intrinsically feel like it means them harm, because it does. Because the witch is there.
You could play it in a way, and I don't know if that's stupid, but you could play it in a way where if they were to attack the Moor, that kind of as an extension of the witch has some impact on her powers. And maybe Mr. Cole Wind Magic Boy was whipped there by the wind to also put the Moor on fire. Maybe that's his overall goal in the story itself. But I'm a sucker for supernatural nature extensions of one being. I think it's such an that's why I like Annihilation so much, as in the consummation of as an individual to becoming a bigger part. It's a nice theme. It's a juicy theme.
Yeah, I also think that's why Lexi and Cole are the ones the guy from the council tells them, hey, the kids, we buried the witch somewhere in a copse of trees 3 hills that way, and then they find it, and it's not a copse of trees anymore, it's a forest now. It's grown over the centuries, it's much bigger now, and they're the ones who go in there and they find the children and the bones, because Lexi has this connection to the Moor, and Cole's not really alive, so the powers of the Moor that would otherwise turn people away or hide things don't affect them in the same way. And also, while they're trying to fight her and take the bones, the wood is set on fire. Which is in the story it happens because the townspeople are mad, and it's dramatic because the kids are still in there, and Lexi's scared that the kids are gonna
set it on fire while the kids. Oh my god!
They didn't know that the kids were there. They were just oh, Cole's there, and we gotta kill him. So they were which it's kind of convoluted and stupid. But I feel it would make a lot more sense if Cole was the one to set it on fire on purpose, because he sees that Lexi is struggling with the witch, and is this is where her energy is strongest, because that's where she's buried, where most of her has seeped into the ground, literally, and not just metaphysically. So if we destroy that, then she will become weaker, and Lexi has more of a chance. Also, Lexi is a really dumb name for your historical witch story, but that's
but
anyway, so that's most of what I would change. I'm gonna look if I have anything else. But and in that way, I think it would make sense for an epilogue that then shows how the town has changed and the past.
That would be cool.
Oh yeah, what I also want to say, I don't remember this, and I wasn't committed enough to read 200 pages to figure it out. The witch obviously hates the council in specific, so it should also make sense that their children disappear first. They're stolen first, and it's an obvious sign. And the people from the council probably have an inkling what's happening, but they're just oh no, all children are in danger. It's not just ours, it's not just revenge on us, it's
they try to convince them.
All of you, so I think that's but yeah, that was the main part. I have, again, practiced restraint and not killing a lot of people, but I also think it's not necessary, because I think the creepiness should come from the town, and from the idea that they're fucking weird, but they also think witches and Lexi are weird, that this interplay of
from the setting itself. Yeah.
Because I feel the setting is super underutilized here. It's just oh yeah, the Moors. I can't believe one of the most striking things, there are no strangers in the town of Near. That this is immediately such a good place to start your creepy story, where it's hey, if there literally are no strangers in your town, that's not normal. What has happened for your town to either be repellent or inaccessible to strangers?
I thought, okay, so it's that tidbit is literally no strangers come to Near. Because I thought
Lexi has never seen strangers. They're just no, but the story doesn't really address that at all. It's just strangers don't come in. It's what do you mean?
I thought one could also interpret it, but if it's explicitly said that it's about that aspect, but it could also be seen as in everybody in this town knows each other. There are no secrets, because there's nobody whom you're oh yeah, I don't know, this random
Yeah.
guy from
No,
across the
absolutely
street
too.
somewhere.
But also, like, it obviously means, like, literal strangers, because
nobody
then
comes
it's like,
there.
and then
Yeah.
the first stranger in forever, Cole, the first stranger
Yeah.
people have ever seen, you know, and it's like, yeah.
I have to say, and this has nothing to do with the book,
Yeah.
the first, when you said, oh, there's like a ghost boy called Cole,
Yeah.
I immediately thought of Dragon Age Inquisition, because there literally is a ghost boy called Cole who is in between
That's
being
so
a ghost
funny.
and
Oh
being
my
like
God.
a human. And it's one of the character decisions you can make in Dragon Age Inquisition for him to either say, you should accept that you are dead and connect with your spiritual side and become an actual spirit, or you have manifested so much and you try to relate to humanity so much, so maybe you should let go of that spirit side and take the opportunity of a second chance. So I was like, interesting. But that's a me thing.
That's so
But
funny.
yeah, but there's, yeah, and he's not really a boy in Inquisition, obviously, because you send him off to war with
Yeah.
you. He's like a young man. But
Yeah.
it's just any ghost named Cole or ghostly appearance named Cole immediately reminds me of him. Yeah. But I like what you did with the book. I think, especially when you said you want to lean into horror, setting is so important for horror.
Yeah, no, setting does so much.
And I mean, she set it up perfectly. A
Yeah, I
circular
was like,
town, a
yeah, I was
moor.
like, the pieces are all there,
It's
but you're
all
not
there.
doing anything.
It's like opposed to Ninth House, where Bardugo did too much.
Yeah,
This book
is like
Needs
too
a little push.
Where
to
I'm
do
like,
more.
yeah, okay, for like a debut novel, this makes sense. It's like, yeah, the ideas are kind of half-baked. Like, it's not terrible, but it's also not particularly good. Whereas Ninth House is not, like, a
Yeah.
debut novel.
To be honest,
Unfortunately.
I feel like the book you just rewrote has Christina Henry vibes. To be honest,
it does.
it does.
I mean,
in a
it
good
does.
way. In a
I
good
mean,
way.
Honestly, like, there is something kind of a little bit similar in The Horseman. It's not quite like this, but, like, the town is supernatural, and, like, a lot of people come there, but very few stay. Like, people come in and trade or whatever, but they also leave.
But they
again.
don't stay.
Yeah, and very few people stay, and, like, there is something, like, off with the town, but it's, like...
But I remember you also didn't give that book a good rating, right?
No, parts of it are really good, and then the ending twist is really stupid.
Yeah.
Part
I
of the
feel
ending
like
is
that's
really disappointing. I was like,
That's
wait,
a
what do
thing.
you mean this is what you're doing for the ending? This is stupid.
I feel like Christina Henry sometimes whiplashes you with a bad ending. And it's like, everything was good. Everything went perfect. Or like, okay-ish.
Yeah.
And then she comes along and just ruins the whole book for you. Yeah.
I mean, for most of them, I don't feel like that. I feel like most endings are relatively appropriate for their source, but for this one, I was
Yeah.
just like, wait, what do you mean? No, that doesn't work with... What do you mean? Like, I was really upset about that. I was upsetty spaghetti reading that. I was like, no!
Spaghetti, yes, I haven't heard that
I
yet.
did not like that. Like, there are some of the books that really stick the ending, like Lost
Yeah.
Boy and Near the Bone really, like, are successful
yeah,
in that.
yeah.
But then there's also some where it's like, I mean, I guess this works. Like, The Mermaid, where I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess it works. It's, like, fine. I mean, it's,
I don't
I think
wanna-
my least favorite
yeah.
book of hers anyway, but it's like...
I don't want to spoil anything for
Oh yeah,
our
Good
spooky
Girls Don't
read.
Die, right?
But
You talked about how the ending was like...
yeah, for me the ending of Good Girls Don't Die was it was on theme, but at the same time it was like, really? So
Yeah.
but I don't want to spoil anything. You
I
still
feel
have to read
like
that
the
book.
Horseman reveal, like, there at the end was, like, not on theme and also made no sense. I was like... I legitimately sat there and out loud was like, wait, no, that's stupid. Like, legitimately, I was just like, that can't be it. This cannot be it.
I just imagine you
Christina,
sitting
don't
in your
do that. Why would you do this? This makes no sense. I was truly upsetty spaghetti because parts of the book I really liked, and like
yeah.
and like it's like it's fun. It has like a trans man character, which I do appreciate. Like the way it was written, it was interesting. like, I think she did that well enough, but there was, like, the ending part where it was just like, what do you... No.
Oh, man. Well, we'll get into her, into another one of her books later in the spooky season of the year.
Yeah.
Spooky. Which will be funny, because currently the spooky books we've decided on are Werewolf, Alpha, Omegaverse, Smut, and Good Girls Don't Die.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
one of them is scarier because it's written by Ali Hazelwood and probably really bad. I am so scared.
Be prepared. There's something coming for you.
Something wicked this way comes. In one way or another.
I was about to say, whatever rocks your boat will have something.
Whatever kind of coming you're envisioning. So.
Well, the knot thickens, I guess.
And the plot thinnens, unfortunately.
Okay, with that being said, I hope... Do you have anything more to say for your picks?
No, this was fun. Again, I feel like I would think it would be fun to do series next time.
Ooh,
to do like a more overarching like idea, because I feel like first of a series are like, you can read that book, but you can never just do a second book in a series, because like, again, so much of the series is already set there, and I think it could be fun. Yeah, no, especially for I mean, I think every single book I had today was the start of a series. So it's like sometimes things that you critique in the first book are intended to be lead to more
for the sake of no
absolutely. I think we should think about that.
It also solves your problem of complaining that I read a lot of series.
I mean, I'm just gonna be like, here, have 3 of your favorite book series. Now tell me which one you're canning.
Well, be excited. Thank you so much for listening.
This is a threat.
We kind of got away with time again this time.
This ended up very long. I mean, we had a lot to say, I suppose.
We did. We also had some fun little excursions. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you had a good time. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.